afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is 3 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon. It is March 9th, and we have a great City Commission meeting scheduled with all kinds of excitement here today. I want to welcome everybody to the City Commission chambers and anybody that's watching online, and I'd like to invite everyone to please join me as I do at the beginning of every meeting. Let's show the world how we conduct our business with civility, treating each other as friends, and let's set the record and show everybody how it is done correctly. With that, it is my honor and privilege to introduce and to invite Pastor Becky Rockatowski of St. Paul's United Methodist Church to please join us for the invocation. We will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is to my right, your left. Please join me in the invocation. Pastor, thank you.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. If we can take a moment to center ourselves in prayer or in reflection. God of all, known by many names, we pray today for one another and for our city and its leaders, for our time together in this moment. Today we will celebrate together, and we will also mourn together. We pray for patience when the agenda feels long and trivial. We pray for the weightier things, for the people of Ukraine and for the people of Russia. Lord, we pray for peace. We are all connected to one another. We pray that the discussions and the decisions that are made here would be made in a spirit of compassion, particularly for the vulnerable, our children, the elderly, the disabled, and those with long-term illnesses, the poor and the disenfranchised. God, we want our city to thrive, not just as numbers on paper, but a place where each person can feel safe and have opportunities for full and healthy lives. We pray for people to have affordable places to live. And we pray for our young people that they would grow up out from under the shadow of violence. We pray for projects that are currently underway and for those that are still being dreamed up that will make Tallahassee a better place. And we pray that in doing so, we can still protect our environmental resources for generations to enjoy. God, we do not always agree on how to get there. But we pray that as we come together today, that we would cling to that which unites us and approach the work before us with solidarity. We are all on Team Tallahassee. So we pray for humility, open ears to hear and understand one another, and for wisdom and discernment in all we do. Amen.
Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, if you will join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pastor, thank you so much. We really do appreciate it. All right, colleagues, we have our City Commission meeting that began at 3 o'clock. We will continue on with the business. We have a regularly scheduled public hearing at 6 o'clock, and depending on if we need to come back or not, we will come back to finish up the business. Mr. Manager, do we have any agenda modifications?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we've got one modification. Item 9.03 has been deleted from your agenda and will be rescheduled for a future date.
Excellent. Any questions on that, colleagues? All right, we're moving on. We have 3 presentations. Ladies and gentlemen, this is by far one of the best parts of the job right here. I want to ask my colleagues to please come down and join me for this special presentation. I believe we're going to be able to fit everybody. To everybody that's here and watching online, it is my honor and privilege to invite the 2021 Florida State University Women's National Championship Soccer Team to please come join us down front. Coach McCoy and your team, thank you for joining us as well. The national champs are in the house. As a two-time graduate of Florida State University, I cannot tell you how proud I personally am, and as your mayor, my goodness, you represent our community so very, very, very well, and we are all so very proud of you. Coach, fine job. We are always just amazed at not only the talent on the field, but also the leadership outside the classroom. I mean, we're also familiar, and I know the Mayor Pro Tem will tell you, we know that y'all were part of Dance Marathon and investing in the high schools here, and that's really cool. That really is. But this is my honor. Coach, if you'll come join me, by the way, I'm going to give you the opportunity to say a couple of words, or anybody else on the team that you would like as well. From the governing body of the City of Tallahassee, a proclamation. Whereas the Florida State University women's soccer team won the 2021 NCAA championship, defeating BYU in a penalty kick shootout. By the way, I think we all had a heart attack during I can only imagine actually playing the game, but all of us watching, it was just absolutely unbelievable. Whereas Florida State University women's soccer team now has the second most NCAA titles in the history of the sport, and is one of only two teams to win 3 titles in an 8-year span. And whereas Jalen Howell, Emily Madrill, and Yuji Zhao were all named All-Americans, Gabby Carl was named an Academic All-American and earned the Elite 90 Award for the second time in her career for having the highest GPA at the College Cup, and is the only player to win this award twice for the sport of women's soccer. And whereas Jalen Howell capped off her career at Florida State, becoming the 6th player to ever win the MAC Hermann Trophy in back-to-back seasons, this award is given to the best player in collegiate soccer. Howell also earned the Hondo Award as the best player in collegiate soccer. Howell was drafted 2nd overall in the NWSL draft to Racing Louisville Football Club. And whereas the Florida State University women's soccer team continues to inspire soccer fans throughout the city of Tallahassee, and actively gives back with events like Kicking It for Miracles, and as we mentioned, a kickball tournament to raise money for Dance Marathon. Now, therefore, I, John E. Daly, by the authority vested in me as the mayor of the city of Tallahassee, do hereby recognize the 2021 Florida State University women's soccer team for winning the NCAA National Championship. Read into the record today in front of each and every one of you, signed with my signature, dated March 9th, 2022. Coach.
Well, first I'd like to thank, of course, Mayor Daley and the commission as well. It's nice being on the right end of winning the national championship, that's for sure. As some of you may know, last May we ended up losing in the national final, which didn't feel quite as good as it did this year. But what you all need to know that I'll share with you is the team standing in front of you has a team grade point average above a 3.5.
Wow.
There's an awful lot of talent here, brain power, soccer power. Wonderful young women, as Mayor Daley has suggested, being great community members and being great representatives of both Florida State and the community. I'd like to ask, we have one player, we're a very diverse group. We have players from all over the world here, but I'm going to ask our young woman from China, Yuji Zhao, who scored the winning penalty, to come up and say a few words.
All right.
Thank you guys for having us today, and we're more than honored and happy to be here and represent this city and to tell you guys we're the national championship.
That's right.
We could not have this amazing successful without you guys' support, the support from the city, the support from the community. So we're gonna keep fighting and we're gonna continue our journey for the incoming seasons, and we're more than proud to say, go Noles.
Go Noles. Okay, I'm going to ask Allison if you'll come stay just for the picture. And while we're doing this, one more time, ladies, I want you to know that we are so proud of you. And just, we're huge fans, but not only what you are doing on the field as national champs, but also in the classroom, but also inspiring young women, and well, women of all ages across the United States, but especially here in Tallahassee. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Can we get a picture?
Right in.
All right.
Emily, let him have the trophy.
We have three presentations today. Our second presentation will be presented by the Mayor Pro Tem. It is in honor of National Multiple Sclerosis Month. Natasha Akoff, are you here? Akoff? Natasha?
Yeah, she's here.
Oh, please come join us. Please come join us. Thank you. Then we'll turn the podium over to the Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Natasha, thank you for joining us today. I also want to give a shout out to Ashley Smith. Ashley has been the driving force behind this the last couple of years. She called me this year and said, Commissioner, I want to make sure that you all are going to do our proclamation again this year and light up City Hall in the color purple. And is it orange? Orange, okay.
Orange.
It wasn't purple. That was a movie. I was thinking about the movie. Thank you, Commissioner. But it is indeed my pleasure to present this proclamation on behalf of the mayor and my colleagues on the commission to the Multiple Sclerosis Society. And the proclamation reads, whereas multiple sclerosis, or MS, is a neurological disease of the central nervous system affecting nearly 1 million people in the United States alone, and whereas multiple sclerosis generally strikes people in the prime of life between ages 20 through 50, and the cause and course of the often debilitating symptoms of MS remain unknown and no cure currently exists. Whereas the National Multiple Sclerosis Society has been committed for 76 years to a world free of MS, heightening public knowledge about and insight into the disease, and whereas together we have transformed what it means to live with MS and provided global leadership to help achieve our vision of a world free of MS. Whereas since 1946, the National Multiple Sclerosis Society has been a driving force of MS research, relentlessly pursuing prevention, treatment, and a cure, and has invested more than $1 billion in groundbreaking research. And whereas funds raised through the National Multiple Sclerosis Society fuel research on pathways to MS cures and invest in the MS research and workforce at the highest and best medical centers, universities, and other institutions throughout the U.S. and abroad, leading to many breakthroughs in the treatment of this debilitating disease. And whereas stopping MS in its tracks, restoring what has been lost, and ending MS forever is the mission of the National Multiple Sclerosis Society, and one that all Americans and all Floridians should support. And whereas the City of Tallahassee in Florida recognizes the importance of finding the cause and cure of MS and expresses its appreciation for the dedication that the North Florida National MS Society chapter is showing towards creating a world free of MS, now therefore I, and this is on behalf of the mayor, John E. Daly, by the authority vested in me as mayor of the City of Tallahassee, do hereby recognize March as National Multiple Sclerosis Month and encourage all Tallahasseans to learn more about multiple sclerosis and what they can do to support individuals with MS and their families. Visit their local Facebook page at TLH Living with MS. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Tallahassee to be affixed. It's signed by the Mayor, John E. Daly, on this day, March 9th, 2022. Natasha?
Thank you to the City of Tallahassee, the Mayor, definitely Commissioner Richardson, my friend, Ms. Cox. Yeah, MS is just one of those diseases that, as the proclamation mentioned, we don't know what the cure is. We don't know what causes it. You don't know if the person next to you has MS. I was diagnosed with MS in 2014. There are a lot of people that are diagnosed with MS that are visibly impaired, but until we know more, until we have the research, until we have the funds, to find a cure, we just have to keep pushing forward. So thank you all. This is a step in a right direction, a forward direction of raising awareness in Tallahassee. There is a huge need in Tallahassee. We have a large MS community, and we are working towards hopefully getting some research through our lovely Florida State University College of Medicine, continuing to have MS walks, which we are hoping to have at the end of the month, March 26th. So be on the lookout for that. And then we have a luncheon at the end of the year. So through our advocacy, our self-help group, our fundraising, we're just continuing to hopefully have the support of the community as we continue to look for a cure. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. I want to thank the Mayor Pro Tem for bringing that proclamation to our attention and for presenting that on behalf of the commission. And I want to thank Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox for presenting the next proclamation and bringing it to our attention as well. Presenting a proclamation on Women's History Month will be Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox, and I would like to ask OASIS Board President Kathleen Brennan and the Treasurer Glenda Thornton to please come forward to accept, and anyone else from OASIS that is here that you would like to have join us. Ladies, Commissioner.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Commissioner Porter to please join me. From the governing body of the City of Tallahassee, a proclamation. Whereas the City of Tallahassee recognizes that women of every race, class, and ethnic background have made historic contributions to the growth and strength of our community, the state of Florida, our nation, and the global community in countless recorded and unrecorded ways, and
whereas the City of Tallahassee recognizes that women have played and continue to play a critical economic, cultural, and social role in every sphere of the life of our community by constituting a significant portion of the labor force working inside and outside of the home, and
whereas the City of Tallahassee recognizes that women are integral in the establishment of early charitable, philanthropic, and cultural institutions in our community, and
whereas the City of Tallahassee recognizes that women of every race, class, and ethnic background served as early leaders in the forefront of every major progressive social change movement, and
whereas the City of Tallahassee recognizes that women have been leaders not only in securing their own rights of equal opportunity, but also in the abolitionist movement, the emancipation movement, the industrial labor movement, the civil rights movement, and other movements which create a more fair and just society for all.
and whereas the participation of the City of Tallahassee women in these events has changed the course of history for the betterment of us all and is esteemed and valued by our community.
Now therefore, I, John E. Daly, by the authority vested in me as mayor of the City of Tallahassee, do hereby recognize the month of March as and March 8, 2022 as Women's History Month and International Women's Day. In witness thereof, he has affixed his seal and his signature dated March 9, 2022. And it is our pleasure.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, and we appreciate this greatly. We also recognize many of you were at our Trailblazer Lunch yesterday, which is part of Women's History Month, in recognizing the women in our community who are blazing trails and making a difference right now, living history. Our mission of the Oasis Center is to improve the lives of women and girls through celebration and support, and we envision a world where women and girls thrive at every stage of life. And part of that is having your recognition of your accomplishments. With me right here is Glenda Thornton as well, our treasurer. And would you like to say anything? No. Okay. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Excellent. What a great way to start the meeting. With three wonderful, wonderful presentations. Do we have any announcements, Mr. Manager?
No, sir, we do not.
All right, we're going to have citizen input on the agenda items as we reach those agenda items. Do we have any appearances by other appointed boards, committees, governments?
No, sir.
All right, we're on the consent agenda. Has real quick, any items been pulled from the consent?
No, sir. Item 9.03 was deleted.
All right, 9.03 has been deleted. Mr. Clerk, do we have any comment on the consent agenda?
We do not.
All right, so there is a motion by the Mayor Pro Tem to move the consent agenda, properly seconded by Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox. Seeing no further comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Great. All those in opposition? Nay? Okay, passes unanimously 5-0. We are on item number 11.01, the termination of sister city relationship with Krasnodar, Russia. I will introduce this since I was the one that asked for it to come forward. Colleagues, item 11.01 seeks your consent to terminate the longstanding sister city relationship with Krasnodar, Russia, in solidarity with the nation of Ukraine after the Russian government's unprovoked attack on their nation and their civilians. I place this item on the agenda after hearing from many members of our community who are Ukrainian or who have friends and loved ones in the Ukraine, asking us to do something, including numerous requests to terminate this relationship. In times like these, I believe it is important that we are unambiguous, that we stand on the side of democracy and freedom and against Russia's unprovoked hostilities. And I believe the urgency of this moment has only grown since I placed this item on the agenda last week, with the recent reports of civilian evacuation corridors being attacked and accusations of war crimes being committed against the people of Ukraine. This is not a reflection on Russian citizens who oppose Putin's regime, but it is intended to send a clear message that Tallahassee, like many other communities across the United States, will not be associated with Russian governing bodies, and that we stand on the side of Ukrainians and their right to self-governance. So with that, let's ask, is there any public comment on this issue?
Mayor, we do have one speaker on the item.
Great.
Stanley Sims.
Thank you for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Mayor, this is a very serious issue. My name is Stanley Sims. I'm at 1320 Avondale Way. I'm deliciously pleased for you to do this proclamation. And not only am I asking you to dissolve the relationship, but I'm also asking that the city would, in its place, develop a sister relationship in our Polish countries who are taking in all of these refugees, and that we will do some type of humanity react, that our words will not just be words, but our words will come with deeds. Thank you, sir. Not only, as you know, as I often highlight social justice issues, Commissioner Diane Cox, I don't know if you are aware, a lot of our African-American foreign students who are in Ukraine now are having challenges finding aid to get back into some safety areas. So the humane effort is all of our efforts. I don't complain about the gas prices when I don't have to worry about shells coming through my house or my hospital. I'm thankful that I'm able to pay $5 for gas, and so that my kids are now still going to school and going to work, and no one is threatening them. And Mayor, like you, and you and I don't agree on much often, but we both agree that we will not associate ourselves with a tyranny that has inflicted pain and suffering on innocent civilians. I stand with you on this point, and in POCA, I raise you to gratify and see if staff could do the logistics on us partnering with a country who are taking these people in, and let's galvanize some of this Tallahassee strong love and send it to our brothers and sisters in Ukraine. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment on this item?
No, sir.
Mr. Manager, it was very unique. I introduced the item, but do you have any comment on this item?
No, sir.
Okay. With that, I'm going to move forward and make the motion for option number 1, the termination, the longstanding sister city relationship with Krasnodar, Russia, in solidarity with the nation of Ukraine. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Okay. There's seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem, and you're recognized for comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to ask if you would accept a friendly amendment to the motion to also, in solidarity with the citizens of Ukraine, that we light up City Hall and our Cascades Park pedestrian bridge in the yellow and blue colors of the Ukrainian flag, in solidarity with the citizens and the cause of democracy throughout the world.
I think that's a fantastic idea. No problem. So the motion now stands as amended. Yeah, well, let me ask, can we do that, Mr. Manager? Are you
Yes,
prepared
sir.
logistically?
We can do that tonight, as early as tonight.
Great.
We do have, if it's your will, we do have a reservation for multiple sclerosis.
Correct.
That begins on Sunday.
Correct.
So we could leave those, the City Hall as well as the pedestrian bridge illuminated for all the nights through Saturday night.
Okay. All right, that's part of the motion. Comment? Yes, Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I've noticed a lot of our streetlights are turning blue. They didn't realize they were in support. First, I would say, I mean, like all of you, we strongly condemn the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I have spoke with and read news articles of people who have been on the delegations to Krasnodar and what their experience was, and I think it is appropriate to highlight that perspective as well. It was in the WFSU of one gentleman who went on a delegation, and he said the experience was enlightening to him because he met with a journalist who actually had a colleague that was killed by the Russian state, and I think that type of dialogue is productive. And I was just wondering, Mr. Mayor, has there been any communication from them at all since the invasion began?
So I think since we got elected, Commissioner, 3.5 years ago, we have had 2 emails, maybe? I'm trying to.
I don't know. There have been emails to your office. I don't know how many, sir.
I can't tell you how many, but they have not been that many. I mean, as you know, and as we have previously discussed as a body, the International Sister City program, since we've all been elected, whether it's because of COVID or what it is, has really been pretty much defunct.
Okay. And so I do think we should look at what other steps we can take, you know, how we can open up our community to Ukrainian refugees, how we can look at the gas price issue in the room from a different angle of how we can expedite moving away from fossil fuel. So like as a city, we can really become independent of that. And I also think, and I appreciate your comments, Mr. Mayor, that it's not about the citizens, because as we saw in Russia, thousands of people took to the streets of St. Petersburg that are against this. And as I stated again, also strongly condemn the actions of Russia. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Excellent. Commissioner Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I will support this, the motion, and I just want to reiterate, as you said, that this is in solidarity with the nation of Ukraine and those who are suffering as well in Russia under this government, and that this is not to be taken as an indictment of all Russian people in any way, but instead in solidarity with Ukraine, as the motion states. Thank you.
Great. The motion for option number 1 as amended. Commissioner Williams-Cox, any comment?
No.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. Passes unanimously 5-0. We are on item number 11.02. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 1102, the Tallahassee Housing Authority has a seat that expires in April. Courtney Atkins is recommended for reappointment to serve in that seat, that she has or will be completing her first term in April, so this is a reappointment to a second term.
Excellent. Do you have any public comment on this item?
No, sir.
Colleagues?
Move acceptance of the recommendation to reappoint.
Commissioner Williams-Cox has
Second.
properly moved the staff recommendation to
Second.
reappoint, seconded by Commissioner Porter. No further comment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. Passes unanimously 5-0. We're on item number 11.03. Mr. Clerk.
Mayor, this item concerns appointments to the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. There are currently 3 vacant seats. The following are recommended for appointment: Michelle Mickles, Jesse Jones, and Sherry G. Wanter.
Excellent. Any public comment on this item, Mr. Clerk?
No, sir.
All right, colleagues.
Move acceptance of the recommendation.
Second.
It's been properly moved by Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox, seconded by Commissioner Porter for staff recommendation of the appointments. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. Passes unanimously 5-0. We're on item number 12.01. Madam Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 12.01, introduction of ordinance number 22-0-05, an ordinance of the City of Tallahassee updating the capital improvements element of the 2030 Tallahassee-Leon County Comprehensive Plan, providing for severability and conflicts and provided an effective date. The recommended action is option 1, introduce ordinance number 22-0-05 and set the first and only public hearing for the City Commission meeting on March 23rd, 2022 at 6:00 p.m. in the City of Tallahassee City Commission chambers at City Hall.
Excellent. Mr. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not.
All right. The recommended action is option 1, which is simply to introduce, but is there a motion?
Move acceptance.
Second.
Okay. Probably moved by Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox, seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. Passes unanimously 5-0. We're on item number 12.02. Madam Attorney.
Thank you. Item number 12.02, introduction of ordinance number 22-0-14, an ordinance of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, amending Section 6 of the Charter of the City of Tallahassee to annex within the corporate area of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, upon adoption of said ordinance, property being situated in Leon County, Florida, near the intersection of Crawfordville Road and Capitol Circle Southwest, in accordance with the voluntary annexation provisions of Section 171.044 Florida statutes, providing for severability, conflicts, and an effective date. The recommended action is option 1, introduce ordinance number 22-0-14, and set the first and only public hearing for Wednesday, May 11th, 2022, at 6:00 p.m. in the City of Tallahassee City Commission chambers at City Hall.
Mr. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
No, sir.
All right, colleagues.
Move acceptance.
Been properly moved by Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox, seconded by Commissioner Porter. Seeing no further comment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously, 5-0. We're on item number 13.01, policy formation direction. Madam Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 13.01, analysis of Independent Ethics Board's ordinance recommendations. On September 1st, 2021, the city's Independent Ethics Board transmitted draft ordinance number 21-ORD-01 to the City Commission, recommending 3 amendments to the City of Tallahassee Ethics Code. On September 21st, 2021, the IEB transmitted a letter referencing draft ordinance numbers 20-ORD-01, 20-ORD-02, and 20-ORD-03 to the Commission, recommending amendments to the city's lobbying provisions. On February 16, 2022, the City Commission met in workshop to discuss the IEB's draft ordinances, as well as several other issues related to ethics and the jurisdiction of the IEB. The Commission directed the City Attorney to bring back an agenda item analyzing the IEB's proposed ordinances. The City Attorney's Office has analyzed each of the IEB's recommendations and makes the following 8 recommendations to the City Commission as options. Option 1, regarding misuse of position, approve for introduction for public hearing an ordinance adding inconsistent with proper performance of public duties as an element of misuse of position. Number 2, option 2, as to penalties, approved for introduction for public hearing an ordinance providing authority for the IEB to identify and dispose of de minimis violations, meaning those which are unintentional and not material in nature, and the ability also to enter into settlement agreements. Option 3, regarding the disclosure of use of non-public information. Approved for introduction for public hearing an ordinance to correct the Scrivener's error. This was already approved at the Ethics Workshop on February 16, 2022. Option 4, definition of lobbyist. Approved recommendation to retain the current definition of lobbyist. Option 5, lobbyist registration. I'm recommending no ordinance introduction. Therefore, you would approve recommendation not to require covered individuals to ensure that lobbyists are properly registered. Option number 6, regarding lobbyist contingency fees, approve an ordinance for public hearing banning contingency fees for lobbying. Number 7, public website for lobbyist registration and compensation reports. Approve recommendation not to introduce an ordinance for public hearing, since lobbyist registration and compensation reports are already placed on the city's website. And then option 8, regarding the expanded jurisdiction of the Independent Ethics Board over lobbyists, approve City Attorney's Office recommendation to retain the same jurisdiction approved by the voters by referendum in 2014. I'm available, as well as Deputy City Attorney Amy Tillman, to address any questions you may have on this.
Thank you. I know you all have worked very hard on this, and I once again want to thank the Ethics Board and the Executive Director and the Attorney for the Ethics Board for their hard work on this. We had a great workshop not too long ago. With that, let's begin public comment on this item.
Mayor, we have, I think, 4 speakers on this item.
Great.
The first is Stanley Sims. Mr. Sims will be followed by Richard Herring.
Thank you for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
I'm in 1320 Prince, and my wife still allows me to stay there. Stanley Sims. Ethics. Ethics. Ethics is something, it's like integrity. It's what you do when no one's looking. Ethics gives us a monitor, a measurement of how a person is conduct themselves when they represent a great city like Tallahassee. Ethics. Nothing criminal, just not a smart thing to do. Ethics. Something worth chastising and correcting, but not giving them a prison sentence. What am I saying? Is it illegal for the city manager, state attorney, county administrator, get on a Delta flight, sit together just after the community saw our mayor receive almost $30,000 in funds to push through $27 million ethics? Ethics. Ethics. Is it illegal? No. Ethics is only as strong as we the people. We who contribute to this money and pay city officials to conduct themselves in an ethical manner. Ethics. 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 We don't want blood. We're not trying to overthrow the government. Dr. Martin Luther King says the protesters come from the voices of not heard. Ethics. We're trying to hear you see that we want ethics.
You're at 30 seconds.
And the ethics we have with the culture that is currently in City Hall. And the only way you won't even realize that even when a federal court says we have problems, there are some members on this dais ignored when he said, I've got all my people in place. Reese, Ben, Wayne.
Mr. Sims, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
You the clerk now.
I'm the mayor.
Act like
Your next speaker, please, Mr. Clerk.
Next speaker is Richard Herring.
Thank you for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Be followed by Ben Wilcox.
Richard Herring, 1110 Ivanhoe Road. 3 quick points. First, the Citizens for Ethics Reform has spent a lot of time talking about this, and we strongly support the recommendations of the Ethics Board. Second, the city attorney made a number of recommendations. I just want to point out, if you adopt those recommendations, the ones that support the Ethics Board are mostly clarifying or minor recommendations that in fact will reduce the number of ethics violations for de minimis complaints. Those that would actually strengthen the ethics code, the recommendations made by the Ethics Board are not recommended by the city attorney. And third, over the last year, I've heard a number of arguments about lobbying in specific, that lobbying is not ethics, that lobbyists are not covered by the Ethics Board, and that lobbying was not addressed by the voters in 2014 when they adopted the charter amendment. And I just want to put on record what the charter says. It specifically gives the Ethics Board the power to recommend ordinances or charter amendments to the City Commission in all areas of ethics and corruption, including but not limited to lobbying. So clearly, our own charter includes lobbying within the purview of ethics generally. And to say that if anyone who would argue that it doesn't, I believe is simply wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Ben Wilcox, and followed by Carlos Ray, and I believe those are the last 2 speakers on the item.
Thanks for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon, Mayor Daley and Commissioners. I'm Ben Wilcox with Citizens for Ethics Reform, and I live at 1719 Old Fort Drive. When I spoke to the lobby workshop, I introduced the term ghost lobbyists as a reason to revise the definitions of lobbyists and lobbying in our city ordinances. Ghost lobbyists are lobbyists who don't register with the city and don't disclose their clients as required if they were registered. At the workshop, I didn't give any examples of why unregistered lobbying is a problem for this city and its current reputation for corruption. Today, I will give you an example. Her name is Paige Carter Smith. Throughout the federal public corruption trial that took place last summer, we learned that Carter Smith and Governance, Inc. were hired to, quote-unquote, lobby on behalf of various business interests, including the rideshare company Uber. At one point, the undercover federal agents were told, if you really want to grease the wheels of Tallahassee government, hire Paige, and Scott Maddox will get what you want done. Both Paige and Scott were profiting from what was essentially pay-to-play corruption. Guess what? Paige Carter Smith never registered as a lobbyist with the City of Tallahassee. Also during that time, she served as director of the Downtown Improvement Authority, a position that would have been a conflict of interest had she been a properly registered lobbyist. In a series of reports in January 2020, the Tallahassee Democrat exposed other cases where individuals were lobbying local government and not registering and disclosing their clients. Why is this a problem for the city and its residents? Imagine if there's a business that is considering coming into the Tallahassee market and bringing new jobs. When they make inquiries, the word on the street is don't bother hiring any of the more than 30 lobbyists that actually are registered. You need to hire a non-registered, quote-unquote, consultant from the consulting firm Winkin', Blinkin', and Nod if you want to get your development or business deal done. And oh, by the way, the reason this guy is so connected is he's also out there raising campaign contributions for the elected officials' campaigns. From the outside looking in, this is what corruption looks like. And there's no way a reputable business is going to want to be involved with that. It's disappointing that the city attorney is recommending that you do not adopt the new definitions of lobbyists and lobbying proposed by the Independent Ethics Board.
You have about 30 seconds.
The city attorney does propose alternative language that essentially says if you are being paid to lobby, you have to register whether you call yourself a lobbyist or not. If you are going to accept the city attorney's recommendation, we urge you to adopt this alternative language as well. That would at least show that you recognize ghost lobbying is further damaging the city's already badly damaged reputation. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Next is Carlos Ray, and he is the last speaker for item 1301.
Mr. Chairman, thanks for joining us.
Of course, Mr. Mayor.
I have enjoyed working with you and your board on this issue.
Likewise. Carlos Ray, 2009 Eastgate Way. Mr. Mayor, Commissioner, city staff, members of the public, my name is Carlos Ray. I have the privilege of being the chairman of the Independent Ethics Board of the City of Tallahassee. I have served on the board since 2018. Since my time on the board, we have made great strides as a city, in cooperation with the board, to strengthen our ethics code, to make it one of the strongest in the state. You showed commitment to ethics by holding a workshop February 16th to consider our recommendations, where we as the board had the opportunity to sit at the table and have a robust discussion of our recommendations to strengthen our ethics code. Today, I'm not going to review all those recommendations, but clarify on 3 issues we want to focus on. One is contact logs. We believe it is important to improve the transparency of business dealings in the city. Contact logs require lobbyists who meet with covered individuals to write down the issues and who they met with and present that to the treasurer clerk within 3 days. This is a requirement that's included in Palm Beach and other counties and Broward as well. I think this is an example of showing greater transparency in the dealings of the city. Regarding the definition of misuse of office, this commission rightly removed the term corruptly, which hindered our ability to really find violations in the city because the terms are so high. We had to find intent in the acts of those doing wrong. We believe that we can narrow the scope of misuse to allow people to do their service to the public without being in violation of the ethics code. Our recommendation to include the terms inconsistent with public office will help us continue to do our job at the Ethics Board and allow you to do your job as public officers. And finally, we believe that all city employees should be prohibited from using non-public information for private benefit. Really, right now, that scrivener's error should be corrected to include that all those who work for the city cannot use non-public information for their personal use. These are recommendations we want to focus on. I think we have made great strides. I think we continue to work together to make these improvements to our city ethics code. My staff and I will be here available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our next speaker.
No additional speakers.
All right, excellent. We have the city attorney and her team here to answer any questions that you may have. We had a great workshop on this item. I've had a chance to have a follow-up with the chair and the executive director. I hope you all have as well. Let's open it up for discussion and direction. Mayor Pro Tem.
I'd like to move the city attorney's recommendations on options 1 through 8, Mr. Mayor.
All right, motion's on the table for recommendation 1 through 8. Is there a second to the motion?
I second that motion.
Been properly seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox. Commissioner Porter, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was wondering if there was any way we could perhaps, I'm not trying to be overly onerous, but vote on these items individually or in sections, because there are some where the city attorney is recommending approval of the ethics board's recommendations. I don't want to be in the position of voting down something that I half agree with and half disagree with or want discussion.
Well, there's a motion on the table for the staff recommendation 1 through 8. Let's see how the conversation goes. Of course, if you want to make a substitute motion, as a member of this body, you are more than welcome to. And any questions that you have for the city attorney and staff, look.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and make a substitute motion to accept options 1, 2, 3, and 6.
Second.
Substitute motion for staff recommendation
Yes.
for option 1, 2, 3, and 6, made by Commissioner Porter, seconded by Commissioner Matlow. Any further discussion? Sure. Commissioner Matlow?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, I just wanted to ask, we received a letter on March 8th from the Independent Ethics Board with some clarifications. Can that be included as part of the record for the item?
Of course.
Okay. Then I'll start.
Mr. Mayor, on point.
Yes, ma'am.
We received that letter. I'm not sure if the city attorney received it because I did forward it to her.
Sure.
But it was not sent to her directly from the Independent Ethics Board.
Okay.
And I don't know the reason for that, but she now has it because I shared it.
Yes, I have it, and I have reviewed it.
Excellent.
Okay.
Would you like to provide comment on the letter outside of your recommendation?
I think my recommendations cover it. Regarding the contact logs, I did not make a recommendation. As regarding the misuse of public position, I agreed with the Ethics Board. And then thirdly, you had already spoken on the issue of disclosure of use of non-public information. I would like to clarify for the record that no employee or official can use non-public information for their own benefit. That's state law. So that is the case regardless of whether or not the city commission permits jurisdiction of the local ethics board, just for clarification.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Attorney. So I support the motion on the floor because I do think we need to have a separate conversation regarding lobbyists, whether it's the Independent Ethics Board's definition or the alternative proposed by the city attorney. I think they both seek to get to the same result. I think our overarching issue to me has been who's actually responsible for enforcement? Is it the treasurer clerk's office to actually be the cop on the beat if a lobbyist isn't registering? Because outside of us, and we've seen in Tallahassee reports, we've seen conversations at this board of people who have reached out who have lobbied us, who haven't registered. So is it our responsibility to take them to task and make them register Could it be the ethics officer's responsibility if we expanded that jurisdiction? Or do we need, or is it the inspector general? Whose real role is it to enforce that? And that question is unanswered. So I think when we have people saying, I'm a consultant, I'm a communications expert, I'm a, something else, but they're getting paid to influence a decision, we all recognize that's wrong and that's lobbying and they need to register, but it doesn't seem we have a point person to go and tell them that and hold their feet to the fire to make it happen. So I can support both the lobbyist definition by the Independence Ethics Board. I could get to the city attorney's recommendation as well, because I do think if we actually strictly followed the definition, I think it would capture everybody we're looking to capture. And I do think we should look at expanding the lobbyist oversight by the Independent Ethics Board, as well as I don't think there was the contact logs. I think that's a no-brainer that we could do as well. So that's why I couldn't support the first motion on the table. So I'd like to have a separate conversation about the lobbyist reform in the event that this motion moves or doesn't. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Let me clear the motion that's on the table right now for 1, 2, 3, and 6, because I think that's unanimous support. All those in favor of the substitute motion that was made by Commissioner Porter, seconded by Commissioner Matlow. Yes, Commissioner Porter.
If Commissioner Matlow accepts, I can include option number 7 as well with that motion, if there's no objection.
That is the public website.
Mm-hmm.
No objection.
Okay. So if we can just add that to
the amended motion on the table is for options 1, 2, 3, 6, and 7. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
So the motion for 1, 2, 3, 6, and 7 passes 3-2 with Commissioner Williams-Cox and the Mayor Pro Tem in opposition. So we are back on the original motion, but the original motion needs to be amended because the original motion was for 1 through 8, but only thing left now is 4, 5.
On point, Mr. Mayor, if the substitute motion carried, isn't the floor just open, or do we don't really return to the first motion? Madam Attorney?
Well, I'll look for Madam Attorney's interpretation, but there are 3 items left that was part of the original motion. Yes, you're correct. So I'm going back to see if there's an amended motion that he would like to make, because the original motion included all of the recommended action 1 through 8, and what passed was 1, 2, 3, 6, and 7. So it'd be a new motion.
Okay.
That's the question. Would you like to make a new motion since 1, 2, 3, 6, and 7 has passed? In your original motion, it would have been 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, and 4, 5, and 8. Am I confusing you?
That's what I was going to say.
Okay, let's go back. So what happened is that the original motion that was made by Commissioner Richardson was for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay. The substitute motion by Commissioner Porter was only options 1, 2, 3, 6, and 7. Correct, Commissioner Porter?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. And just to clarify, those are all the recommendations of the city attorney.
Correct.
That's where there's agreement between the board and the city attorney.
Right. So those were included in your original motion as well. What is left for discussion and action are options 4, 5, and 8.
I got you.
So again, 1, 2, 3, 6, and 7 have passed. That motion was 3-2. What is left up for discussion and for action is 4, 5, and 8. Okay.
Okay.
So now that we're all on the same plate, I'll come back to a question. Commissioner Williams.
Point of clarification. So basically, Commissioner Richardson and I agreed for all of the recommendations, but really what's happening here is you're pulling out, the lobbyist piece is being pulled out.
Let me
I'm going to make a motion to adopt staff recommendation on items 4, 5, and 8, and that will cover the other 3
Let me put it to you
that have not been adopted.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So if this was the consent agenda, and if there were 8 items on the consent agenda, basically what happened was Commissioner Porter has pulled 4, 5, and 8 off of the consent agenda for further discussion and for action, but put into motion, let's go ahead and approve 1, 2, 3, 6, and 7.
Okay.
And so that's what that motion was to go ahead and approve the attorney's recommendation for 1, 2, 3, 6, and 7,
Okay.
and to leave open 4, 5, and 8 now for discussion.
Okay.
So, yes, ma'am.
I got it. So let me do this then, because for that clarification, I can now support the substitute motion. So I'm asking for reconsideration of the vote that was just taken.
I thought that might be in order.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask the city attorney, and let me apologize if the confusion was on my part for making the motion and whatnot. I think that we're all unanimous on it.
It's complicated.
So at this point, so Commissioner Porter, it was your motion. What's being asked is the reconsideration. We'll take the motion reconsideration. I'm assuming that your motion is going to pass 5-0, and then we'll move on for discussion of 4, 5, and 8. Madam Attorney, so walk us through the motion to reconsider and go from there. Does it need to be made by the majority?
It needs to be made by someone who was on the prevailing side.
Right.
I'll make a motion to reconsider.
That'd be great. Commissioner Porter, I appreciate that. Commissioner Matlow, will you second that? Okay. All those in favor of the motion to reconsider signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes 5-0. So now we are on the original motion, or excuse me, the substitute motion made by Commissioner Porter, seconded by Commissioner Matlow for items 1, 2, 3, 6, and 7. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes 5-0. Okay, so now we're on items, we are looking for direction on items 4, 5, and 8.
And that was my motion, Mr. Mayor, to approve the city attorney's recommendation on items 4, 5, and 8.
Excellent. There's a motion on the table for items 4, 5, and 8. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
It's been seconded by Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox. Let's open it up for discussion.
All right, man.
Yeah, got to get some water.
What's in that cup?
Pure water. Award-winning tap water by the city of Tallahassee.
You want to add something to it?
Commissioner Matlow for comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think as we're trying to take up 8 major items, it seems to be the reason we should do some of these things piecemeal and one at a time and avoid some of the confusion. But I can't support the motion on the table because I do think we need to make some changes in our lobbyist definition. As I said earlier, I could support the Independent Ethics Board's recommendations or the city attorney's definition. I think on number 5 in the Independent Ethics Board's clarification letter, they ceded the point of ensuring our responsibility to make sure the lobbyists are registered, since we don't necessarily always know who is lobbyist, as well as the need to expand the jurisdiction of the IA over lobbyists. So I'll make a substitute motion to move forward with adoption of the Independent Ethics Board's definition of a lobbyist. The Independent Ethics Board lobbyist registration and contact log recommendation, but removing the responsibility on city officials to ensure lobbyists are registered and to expand the jurisdiction of the IAB over lobbyists.
Okay, there's a substitute motion made by Commissioner Matlow. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
It's been seconded by Commissioner Porter. Any further discussion on that motion?
I have a question.
Commissioner Williams-Cox.
In regards to when you said no, there's no need for public officials, you're referring to the clerk or just commissioner?
Okay, so there was language, I'm going to pull it up.
Because right now, that's where it is.
Was it where it's,
Commissioner Porter.
thank you, where it says that we must ensure, I think it's removing that language or changing that language?
Yes, that's what I'm recommending. There was language that, I'm trying to find it exactly, but to ensure covered individuals are
registered.
Right, that covered individuals would ensure lobbyists are registered, removing that caveat.
Okay, seeing no further discussion. Substitute motion made by Commissioner Matlow, seconded by Commissioner Porter. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed?
No.
Aye. And it fails 3-2 with Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox, the Mayor Pro Tem, and the Mayor in dissent. Commissioner Porter, you're recognized.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. I have a question about the motion to accept option number 4, the definition of lobbyist, approving the city attorney's office recommendations. I just want to clarify, does that include the additional language that she suggested?
Okay, coming to the city attorney for clarification. Reminder that the motion on the table currently made by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox, is for item 4, 5, and 8. Clarification, Madam Attorney?
Yes, so in my item, in my analysis, I did not recommend any changes to the lobbyist definition. But if you wanted changes, I presented 2 matters that you could change if you felt some clarification would be needed. And one is to clarify that registration and the filing of reports applies throughout the decision-making process. And also, in addition to that, to state that it applied to, yes, it apply regardless of whether or not they bore the title lobbyist. So the fact that you are doing lobbying, which I think is already covered by the ordinance, because if you're doing it, you're a lobbyist regardless of your title. But if you wanted to add language, I provided language that you could add.
On point. For number 4, the definition of lobbyist, when you briefed me, you're pretty strong in that position because of the consistency in the case law. Will you just, for the record, repeat your position and why?
I'm sorry, regarding?
We had the discussion about the definition of lobbyist, that it's the same as the.
Right, well, their definition is the same as the state definition, which is the same as ours, which is you are attempting to change through a part of the decision-making process, either to try to repeal, amend, or approve some extension, and you're going before a decision maker to do that. And there is a consistency in both blueprint, the county, and the city that we have. And so what my thought is that because we have got to that point where we do have very similar language with these 3 local groups, it is helpful to the public and avoids confusion to retain that so that there will be no confusion.
And the importance of case law supporting it as well.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Porter, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So again, for clarification, Madam Attorney, the suggestions you made are not consistent. You weren't, what you just said, you were speaking to what we have currently, not to your alternative options, correct?
Right. So what I was saying, or what I have recommended, is retain the definition as it is. But if you felt for some reason that you wanted more clarity, you could make those changes that I specified in the agenda item. And that is located on page 4 of 7. Delete the qualifier that person is a lobbyist only if paid for purpose of lobbying. And then secondly, include language to clarify that lobbying can occur during the time period of the entire decision-making process. As I said, I do think that is already the intent and what is in the language. So, essentially you can add more words.
Commissioner Porter, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we're probably, not going to agree on the remaining 3. I would love to support the motion. I would feel so much better if we could include the recommendations that the city attorney suggested as an alternative language. That would certainly be my preference at the very least. But I do want to thank the Ethics Board and their attorney and Mr. Floyd for all the work that you have done, and the chair, Mr. Ray, making these recommendations, serving on the board. And so I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you for your work. Thank you.
Excellent. Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A follow-up, Madam Attorney, that your recommended language which would seek to provide clarity but may not be consequential. That is consistent with state case law? Okay. I'll make a substitute motion that we adopt the alternative language in the agenda item suggested by the city attorney.
On point, Commissioner Williams-Cox.
I thought we were already in the middle of a substitute motion. Did I miss
Primary
something?
motion.
Substitute motion failed. We're back on the primary motion
Okay,
that Commissioner
okay.
Richardson made for items 4, 5, and 8. So Commissioner Matlow, can you restate the substitute motion?
The substitute motion is to adopt the city attorney's alternative lobbyist definition as stated in the agenda item.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
It's seconded by Commissioner Porter. Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Okay. In regards to that, I thought I just heard the city attorney say that if we did this, that would take us out of sync with the other bodies, the other CRA and Blueprint, and it would be confusing could be confusing to the public. Is that what I understood?
That is correct. It is not the same. The language we have now is substantially similar among all three of these agencies. And so that would be, in my opinion, it does kind of, throw into question and could cause confusion to the public. Right now, what we did, even in this past summer, summer 2021, when Blueprint passed its language, it relied on the city's language in coming up with its proposals and its adopted language. So, it will change it, and we won't be as in sync as we were.
Okay. Any further discussion on substitute motion? Seeing none. All those in favor of the substitute motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those against?
Nay.
Aye.
And it fails 3-2 with Commissioner Williams-Cox, the Mayor Pro Tem, and the Mayor in opposition. We are back on the original motion made by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox for items for staff recommendation, attorney's recommendation of 4, 5, and 8. Seeing no further discussion.
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On item 5, lobbyist registration, the city attorney you didn't make a recommendation on contact logs?
I did not.
Okay. So I did pull up the Independent Ethics Board's letter, which said the proposed language also included aspirational language, providing that covered individuals ensure lobbyists are properly registered. The city attorney argued that the language was vague, and as a result discarded that section. Then while they still supported having the contact logs, they recommended removing the language requiring commissioners and staff to ensure lobbyists are in compliance, but still require the lobbyists maintain contact logs. So I think they found agreement with the city attorney on the ensure item, but they still wanted to see lobbyists submit contact logs, and I support that. I'll make a substitute motion on item number 5 that we create contact logs as suggested by the Independent Ethics Board.
Second that.
Substitute motion on the table for the item number 5, the recommendation by the Independent Ethics Board with the contact logs, been properly seconded by Commissioner Porter. Coming back to the Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Mayor, isn't it my understanding, Madam Attorney, that that information is already on the website?
The information regarding the registration information is on the website, and then the information with the compensation reports. My understanding is that Commissioner Matlow is referring to establishing a new process for contact logs by lobbyists.
Which we don't currently have, and therefore would obviously not be on the website at present because we don't have that contact log requirement.
On point. So if the language in Commissioner Matlow's recommendation for his motion does not make the elected official the one that ensures that they do this contact log, is this falling on your shoulders, Mr. Clerk?
Mayor, I think my understanding of how this would work is that the contact log is on the shoulders of the lobbyist. The persons doing the lobbying are required to maintain a log. What would fall on my shoulders is creating a means to capture that information.
Is it enforceable?
It's absent no other information, no. If somebody says, hey, there's information you're not getting, then we would follow up.
Okay.
But we would not have a way to know that there had been a contact, absent the contact log, so it is a self-enforcement mechanism.
Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate those comments. I think that highlights the point of who's the enforcement mechanism, and I don't know if we can solve that question tonight. Maybe it is the Independent Ethics Board and the expanding their jurisdiction, or maybe it's the Inspector General, but I do think we should establish the policies and then create real penalties and actually enforce them, or we're just going to continue to have, unchecked, unregistered lobbying in our community, and I can't support that.
Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Substitute motion on the table. Yes, sir.
Sorry to interrupt, but I just, to that point, it's not that it's not enforceable, it's that, in my view, the level of enforcement is the same regardless of who does it. You could assign it to any number of individuals, but unless there is a way to know that something was not provided, you can't prove a negative.
Right.
I can't know that something's not there, nor could the Inspector General if it were assigned to him. Certainly, if there's anything, including current registration circumstances that we're aware of, we will follow up on that, and we would follow up on that, and we do have penalties in our ordinance.
All right, substitute motions on the table made by Commissioner Matlow, seconded by Commissioner Porter. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
And it fails 3-2 with Commissioner Williams-Cox, the Mayor Pro Tem, and the Mayor in opposition. We're back on the original motion for options 4, 5, and 8. Made by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox. Commissioner Matlow.
I'll make a substitute motion that we expand the jurisdiction of the Independent Ethics Board over lobbyists.
Second.
There's a substitute motion that's made by Commissioner Matlow, seconded by Commissioner Porter. Seeing no further comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
And it fails 3-2 with Commissioner Williams-Cox, the Mayor Pro Tem, and the Mayor in opposition. Commissioner Williams-Cox.
I guess a point of clarification, we had to vote just then, but I thought we had this discussion at the workshop about extending that jurisdiction to lobbyists.
Yes.
And I thought that we decided at a commission meeting that that was not what we wanted to do.
Correct.
So I'm sticking with what we originally voted on prior to the workshop.
On point, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Matlow.
I believe the previous discussions were pertaining to expanding over the CRA, not lobbyists. That's what we voted on previously.
So the original motion on the table, no, we're on, substitute motion just failed. We're on the original motion of options 4, 5, and 8, made by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
And it passes 4-1, correct?
Nay.
Okay, passes 3-2 with Commissioner Porter and Commissioner Matlow in dissent. We are now on item 13.02. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll get right to it. Assistant City Manager Tedder will introduce this item. The developer is available via WebEx with a presentation that I think will be helpful as well. So let me turn it over to Mr. Tedder.
All right, thank you, City Manager. Mayor and Commissioners, good afternoon. On December 8th, you approved staff to negotiate the sale of the property that's subject to this agenda item. You also asked the developer to reach out to the Frenchtown neighborhood community and discuss affordable housing and opportunities to address homeless issues through their development in some way. Working with John Baker and his team, we coordinated a meeting between the Peerless Development Group and the Frenchtown CAT team, and that meeting was conducted on January 14th. The summary of that meeting really entailed the offer of the Peerless Group to work with the developer, to work with the community, to come up with ideas to address their development on their site. However, the CAT team indicated that they were not interested in multifamily student housing on the city's property as well as the other properties. And at such time, if they had additional comments, they would reach back out to the Peerless Development Group. Subsequent to that meeting, we received communication from the CAT team that they desired that if the city was going to sell the property, that they would like the city to negotiate a community benefit agreement with the developer. And with that, they identified about 8 items which are included in your agenda item. Just yesterday, we received a revised correspondence from the CAT team, and really there was no substance changes to that agreement. Item 6 was updated, and item 9 was added to that, and it basically required a traffic study to see what the development does to some of the roadway corridors in that area. And I can address that one real quickly. Just from the site planning process, the developer will be required to do an operational analysis as well as a concurrency analysis to address those transportation needs. We have the Peerless Group all on WebEx, and what I'd like to do, I'm going to first introduce Mike Cordaro to introduce his team and give an update, and once you see their face and their introduction, we'll then have the PowerPoint slide that they can walk through with you. Mike, can you hear us?
Okay, can everybody hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
We got you.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody, commissioners, mayor, and staff. We're happy to be here to talk with you guys and present today. With me, I have Joe Patrick, our Director of Development, Blaine Reams, Managing Partner at Peerless, and Ryan Cohen, who is an Asset Manager at Peerless. Wayne did a great job sort of giving the full backstory, so I think I'd like to, if possible, just go through the slides that we have presented. Mr. Tedder, should I be sharing the screen, or do you have control of those?
The PowerPoint's up. Go ahead and talk, Mike. We'll walk through it.
Okay. Great. I can't see where we're at, but on the first page, for everybody's reference and reminder, here's the site plan for the parcels that we're talking about. The area bordered in red are properties that we have under contract with private sellers, and we are in various stages of due diligence on those properties. Highlighted in yellow are the 2 city-owned parcels, which were approved at that previous meeting for a negotiation with the city for Peerless's purchase. The next slide is just a picture from across Tennessee Street looking at the city-owned parcels. I'll move right on to the requests that we received last week from the Frenchtown CAT team. First request was that Peerless becomes a resource to the community on developing and implementing an Opportunity Zone Fund. We're happy to be a resource if the community has specific questions, but want to preface that with we are not lawyers or accountants, and the U.S. Legislation and tax law that governs the Opportunity Zone regulations are long and complex, and we would encourage that if there's serious desire to learn about Opportunity Zones or invest in an Opportunity Zone, that anybody seek guidance from attorneys and accountants. And we'd be happy to, make recommendations to that fact. Going on to request number 2, the CAT team requested a goal of minority business contracting at 45%. We did have a discussion, Joe had a discussion with Daryl Jones about this number to see how attainable it would be. And we feel that we are prepared to offer a goal of 23% MWSBE, which matches the city's goal for a city-funded project. And we believe that to be a good aspirational goal for us. The next request is that retail space at below market rate be offered for Frenchtown businesses. Our response to that is we're certainly willing to work with local Frenchtown businesses to incorporate them into the retail space in our building, and willing to do that at favorable rates. We want to make note that there's a lot of details that would still have to be discussed and ironed out with regards to, question number 1 is, what is a Frenchtown business? Is it a business owned by a Frenchtown resident? Is it a business that serves Frenchtown? Is it an existing business that's just relocating? So, knowing that there are some details to work out, in good faith, we are willing to offer reduced rates for local businesses. Next request is that a historical marker and designation acknowledging the theater as being the Black theater prior to desegregation. We're definitely on board with designing and displaying a historical marker or designation on the building. We would invite the community to help us in both designing that and putting together what information will be shared on that marker. We sort of envision a plaque, a metal or bronze sort of plaque that would be affixed to the building in the location of the city lots. The next benefit request is that a meeting space within the development be designated for the community and the CAT team use. This one, we respectfully decline this one. We do believe that there is ample space in city-owned businesses in the immediate vicinity, both in the Frenchtown Renaissance Building and in the Lincoln Community Center that are more applicable for this type of use. The next request was that we promote Frenchtown businesses to residents when they move in. This is something that we already do and really like to do in all of our developments. We think it's good practice to welcome our residents to a new community by helping them get to know the businesses in their surrounding neighborhood. So we are definitely happy to engage with local businesses and have them work with our property management and leasing staff in order to include these types of items in move-in packages. The next request was that that Peerless contribute up to $250,000 towards the restoration of, I believe it's 507, maybe 508, West Beverage Street. That would be a historical marker and resource center for the Frenchtown community. To this, we'd like to say we are paying above market value for the land. That is what we offered, which we understand that the CAT team has requested that those funds be given to their organization or the CRA for their designated use. And then furthermore, the additional tax revenue that will be going to the CRA has been estimated to be between $300,000 and $500,000 annually, which will go to the CRA until 2038. So that's $4 million to $7 million of new funds that will go to the CRA, which we believe is the appropriate place for the funds to come from for these types of projects, whether it's a community center, historical museum. We feel that the CAT team should put a plan together, present it to the CRA, and that we will be funding a lot of great projects through this increased tax revenue. And then after here, I'd like to pass it off to Joe to take the next request, which is part of the design, and also go over sort of where we are with the design process. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So the last formal request that we'll go over, which is request number 8 here, asks that we ensure that the facade is consistent with the Frenchtown theme and allow community members to be part of the design process. So this one's obviously a little open-ended. To the best of our understanding right now, there is not a written standard, design guidelines for the Frenchtown neighborhood. with which, new projects and new developers are required to follow. We, as part of our design process, we always, enlist the direction of our design team to get involved as best possible and do research on the community with which we're doing new developments in, and to better understand the neighborhood, to better understand the context. And we would do it really no differently here in this project. We intend to create a quality design with quality materials that fits into the context and the theme of the neighborhood in general. Now, we would love to, and we would absolutely be proactive in enlisting, help and some thoughts from the community. And, we would love to get inspirations from them, memories from them, maybe thoughts that they see as the community theme, and we'll work doing our best to incorporate those into the design process. I think it becomes a little challenging for us to actually bring community members physically into the design process and have them be part of that step by step. It just doesn't quite work really on a logistical basis nor on a scheduling basis. So we would be proactive on the front end, try to get community involvement, and then we would be happy to kind of present along the design process and keep the community up to date on how the design is going. So we hope that would be a reasonable means for kind of bringing the community and the design together in a reasonable fashion. With that, I would like to give everybody just a quick little update of where we are with our conceptual design. If we could flip to the next screen. So these, what we've done is, these are just some very, very conceptual design schemes for where we see the building at this point, understanding that these were prepared a few weeks ago, so actually they don't incorporate the most recent property that we've got under contract at 534 West Tennessee Street. So the building would likely change in shape and size and scale a little bit to further down Tennessee Street there. But this is a view taken from Macomb looking to the northwest at the corner of Tennessee and Macomb. You can kind of start to see the scale of the building, the fact that it does have a little bit of variation and it's not just a big block of apartment buildings. Is, the intent is that this is actually going to be kind of almost a gateway, if you will, into the Frenchtown neighborhood and a kind of a prominent element at this corner. We're not looking to simply put up a block. If we could skip to the next slide there. This is an image kind of looking west down Tennessee Street, just another kind of visual. And again, to reiterate, these are very conceptual. So colors and materials and things like that are certainly not set in stone by any means at this point, but they're here to kind of represent that, you'll see different planes and different colors and different textures within the building, regardless of where they end up. But the building will definitely be varied in size, shape, and scale throughout the whole facade of the building. And if we could skip to the next one. View from the southwest, so we're kind of looking towards the northeast in this one. So you'll notice the lower portion of the building here, which is kind of shown into a black and white box, if you will, on the left-hand side. That right now is currently the area where the city properties are. And I think it's initially been our intent to treat that area a little bit differently, a little special in the building, even though that may not necessarily be the main entrance of the building, but that may also help in a reference and if you will, a historical nod to the Leon Theater that used to be there in that location. So there's definitely a lot of items and elements that we can do within the design process to create a little distinction of this area. If we can skip to the next one. And this is just a true elevation looking, directly north across Tennessee Street to kind of give everybody a good sense of scale and color differentiation. So it's very conceptual, but I think we felt bad that we didn't, when we first sat in the meeting back in December, we didn't really have some good images to share. So we wanted to give everybody a little heads up and let you know that we are making some progress and hoping to do some really nice design things with this site for sure. I think that ends our formal presentation. So we would definitely like to thank everybody for allowing us the chance to present to you again. And if we'd love to open it up for questions or discussion topics on anything that we've covered today.
Great, thank you. Wayne, any final comments? Excellent. All right, Mr. Clerk, do we have public comment on this item?
Frank Langston is here to answer questions and obviously speak if he desires.
Yeah. Hey, Frank Langston, 1018 Thomas Road here in Tallahassee. I've been involved with assembling these properties for some time. sold the original Haven Arrest to some guys several years ago. They tried to convert it to a restaurant, student housing, and it ended up not being cost effective. We've been fortunate to put, I guess now 3-4 pieces together. Would love to have the city pieces that sit in the middle of that included. I've dealt with the Peerless guys for some time now, face to face, on the phone, a lot of Zoom calls. My experience with them is first class. My experience with them is open, like you've seen, and if you've met with them, and some staff and commissioners have, they're very open and direct. They'll tell you what they can and they can't do. One thing that has not been stated yet, different than a lot of projects in this town have been done, student housing, because it's an opportunity funded project, they will own this project for 10 years minimum. So they're not going to build this and flip it, unfortunately, like the standard behind us was done. They are investing $50-60 million in our community. We saw incremental money that goes to CRA, and they're going to be here for at least 10 years. So I'm obviously here to support it, work both sides, working with the landowners, all local landowners. Excited at what it might do for that corner, directly across from FSU, gateway down West Tennessee, gateway into Frenchtown, which we all know about the project on the, I guess that would be the northwest side, or east side that we would love to get going. Maybe this would be a catalyst to do that. So just here to, if I can answer your questions. These guys have all the answers, though.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further comment from the public, let's open it up for commission discussion. Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Oh, there's no other comment from the public?
No other comment.
Okay. I would just like to mention that I had a conversation with one of the CAT team members. I've also had conversation with the Peerless folks, and I looked at the list of items that the CAT team provided, and I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the 8 items that was provided by the CAT team that they like to have. And then with the traffic study, actually, we 7 of the 9 that they have agreed to do. And you know, the last time we met, I asked them to meet with the community. They did, and I understand. And I'm very clear. I don't want student housing, any more student housing in Frenchtown either. But someone sold that property to them, and the zoning supports it. And this is what they have in mind to do. They met with the community like I asked. The community made it clear that they didn't want it, but if it had to happen, these are some of the things that could happen. So I'm ready to support the negotiating a community benefits agreement. One of the things that I asked the developer when I spoke with them was to also include some opportunity for some tempo interfacing, as well as something that we talked about for the Griffin Heights community is making sure you use residents in the community to do some of the work so that they have an opportunity to earn some of the money that's going to be generated there. And I'm told that they had a conversation with Daryl Jones and to talk about the minority participation. So to me, if it's going to happen, it has to happen. And some conditions have been given by the community, then I can support negotiating a community benefit agreement with those additional items that I've asked for. Tempo participation and residents, community members being brought on to do some of the work to earn some of the money. I know that will have to happen through the general contractor or whomever, but I would recommend that we add those pieces in.
Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, the motion on the table would be for option number 2 and 3.
Right.
Second. No, sir. If I can offer.
Well, hold on just a second. There is a second to the motion. Comment from the manager.
Option 2 is to issue a bid for the sale of the property. You have an offer for the property. You would not need to take that action.
We do not need to take that action.
We do not need to do a bid because we have an offer.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's already been worked through with the neighbors, with the community.
Okay, my mistake. So it's for option number 3.
Negotiate a community benefit. You, city manager, community, negotiate a community benefit agreement.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, make a suggestion.
Sure.
If we put these options out here because it was very fluid, I think you probably have passed by some of the options we have. In fact, the negotiating a community benefit agreement, I think that almost just happened, by the way.
Right.
I think that was, there was a lot of discussion about that. If the commission is comfortable with the items that the developer has indicated they're willing to do in response to the CAT team, you could formalize that. You could direct staff to formalize that in a purchase and sale agreement and include the additional items that you've suggested. I think that would be the more appropriate direction at this point, because I think you have the commitment of the developer. We could simply formalize that in the agreement.
I think
Okay,
that.
so let me restate my motion.
Yes,
then.
ma'am.
That we go with option 3, but we will formalize the community benefits that we've discussed here today, those that are listed in the agenda item that they've agreed to, as well as the 2 that I asked to be added regarding temple participation and resident participation.
Excellent.
As well.
Excellent. Seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. All right, let's open it up for discussion. Commissioner Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was wondering if staff had comment on, this isn't listed as a number, it's not a numbered request in the letter that was sent yesterday morning, the updated letter by the CAT team, but they asked that the city's proceeds from the sale of the property are earmarked as additional funding for the Neighborhood First Plan to further support the Frenchtown community, as well as flexibility to use this funding for affordable housing and other programs and projects consistent with the plan's approved action items and priorities. I was wondering if there was any comment on these requests.
I can comment, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Manager.
Commissioner, I think, thank you for that point. That was included originally in your direction to work with the developer, so I think that is, you've already taken that action to provide that direction of any proceeds that come from this that would stay within the neighborhood and could be used for affordable housing. I think that direction's already been given.
On point.
Commissioner Williams-Cox.
I think what Commissioner Porter is referring to is that the CAT team has asked that it not all be necessarily designated for affordable housing, and that it can be used for other earmarked benefit, not just affordable housing, is what I understood the letter to indicate.
We would take your direction on that, Commissioners. We could even bring something back. We'd certainly, whatever your direction, your desire is, we're able to do that. But the direction is to keep the proceeds in the neighborhood.
Yes. Right.
And I think that that's controlling.
Excellent.
Okay.
Commissioner Porter, you got the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I've had the opportunity, and if Peerless Development is listening, I'm sure they are, to meet with them. I've enjoyed my meetings with them. I know that they've got a job to do, and they're here doing it, and I respect that. I think we all agree that Frenchtown is a priceless part of our community, of our history. I think it's sad to me, and I think it's sad to a lot of us, how much of our history there has been erased. I expressed concerns initially with this, not really because of the merits of the project, but because of the no bid process. I understand the logic of they've acquired the surrounding parcels, this is the missing piece, the development will move forward anyway. All of that makes sense to me. One thing, though, that I do want to say is I do think when we purchase public land for a public use, you know, that's not just a throwaway piece of land. We could have done something with that land for the Frenchtown community. It is large enough to have done something. I understand we have not, and that we will benefit from the sale. So I'm not blind to that, but I think that, and not that we haven't done this in the past, but you know, that was, in my opinion, a missed opportunity. That being said, I want to see any kind of development that is going to bring business, that's going to bring tax revenue, that's going to help that area. And so, you know, frankly, I feel very torn, just generally speaking, on this kind of development, mostly because of the scale that bothers me. That is just, and there's no way around the project being what it is. That can't change. But generally, you know, it's just, it doesn't fit with the community, even though I know it's removed and now, anyway. But I do just want to make clear in the letter, and I do want to thank, too, Peerless Development for being so thorough in the way they responded to the CAT team's requests. And not every developer is going to do that, and they certainly didn't have to do that. And so I do want to thank them for doing that. That being said, I just do want the record to show in the letter that we received that the CAT team, you know, is still firmly against this. They don't want to see this kind of development, and I think they want to see the kinds of protections that would prevent this kind of development at this scale from happening in their neighborhood. I know that would require other action to be taken, but I just did want the record to show that. Thank you.
I have Commissioner Williams-Cox, I have Commissioner Richardson, and Commissioner Matlow. Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Commissioner Porter, I share your sentiment, but I also recognize that the owners of this property, folks are selling their property. And I've got to believe that this property was owned by residents of Frenchtown at one time. And they are choosing to sell this property to others to do other work with it. In my conversation with the CAT team member that I spoke with this morning, it was my recommendation that find other land in Frenchtown that might be enticing to developers and develop a plan for purchasing it to prevent others from coming in, developing in our community. We're having that problem all over town, and we've been talking about it. I've been talking about it with my neighbors and friends since before I came to the commission. We have got to pool our money, figure out how we can become empowered to buy this land and save it ourselves. Otherwise, when people sell their property, it's their private, personal property. When they sell it or it gets acquired, then, and the zoning is there, there's nothing we can do to really stop it. I, too, do not want us to lose any more of our history. But that means that we've got to get in the game. We've got to get in there and have some money, and hopefully some of these proceeds will help to do that, or some other funding can help to do that. Again, I'll say again, I do not want to see any more student housing in Frenchtown. I don't. But if people are selling their property to folks to use as they see fit and according to zoning, we can't stop it. Now, those two parcels that the city owned, I don't know whether an opportunity was missed or, you know, you can't go into a community and just tell them what you're going to do, but I don't know if there were already other plans for those two lots, but right now it is surrounded. Mm-hmm. It is going to be surrounded. So we either leave it vacant and explain why it's vacant or whatever we need to, or we can benefit from it and do something, buy some land somewhere else within the community to prevent this from happening. And so that's what I encourage us to do, to figure out where the land is, purchase it so that the community then has its own land trust to prevent further encroachment of student housing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I was just explaining to the city manager, in my life with children at the age they are, there's a cartoon called Big City Greens, which is a farmhouse that has got the development all the way around it. The development's going to happen any which way. You're absolutely correct, Commissioner Williams-Cox, the parcel that it is where it is. I actually think that what you have put into the frame of a motion, that we are negotiating out of this, because again, the development's going to happen regardless because of the private property sales that you referenced. But in this particular move that the City Commission is going to make, we're actually going to be able to bring some community benefit out. So I do support your motion. Okay, I've got the Mayor Pro Tem, then I've got Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess what I want to begin by saying is my personal sentiment towards Frenchtown, because it is personal. Many have heard this before, but I'm going to reiterate it so that you know what my family's history is with Frenchtown. My uncle and aunt owned a business in Frenchtown. For years, they lived on Georgia Street, them and their 4 children that they raised in the Frenchtown community. My father, I just learned from one of my older brothers, it lived in Donaldsonville, Georgia, but had some issues with his dad, and he was forced to move out of the home, and he moved in with my uncle and aunt in the Frenchtown community and lived with them and their children for several years, attended the original Lincoln High School and graduated from that same school, and then went on to establish a naval career. When I was growing up, and we would go to visit my grandmother and grandfather and other family members in Donaldsonville, Georgia, which is just up the road from here, we would stop through Tallahassee and we would visit my uncle and aunt's shop, and they would give us sodas, Commissioner Williams-Cox, and candies and stuff that children liked. And I just learned recently that one of the kiosks there in Frenchtown mentions my family members who lived in the Frenchtown area. Kate Condra was my cousin-in-law. We were related by marriage. And so I have that family connection to Frenchtown, and certainly share that sentiment for wanting to preserve what was Frenchtown, but what was Frenchtown? I mean, that was during the times of segregation, not only in our community, but in our state and nation. It was a thriving community. It was one that had its own businesses and shops and schools and neighborhoods, and it was thriving. But after segregation and people were able to move out and live where they wanted to live and establish their businesses where they wanted to establish their businesses, Frenchtown fell on hard times. So by the time I came here in 1974 to attend school, Frenchtown was in a desperate situation. There was drug addiction, there was crime, there was prostitution on the streets, and certainly none of us would want to remember those times. And we've done quite a bit in the years since then to try to improve the neighborhood. Is there more that needs to be done? Certainly there is. And we've committed ourselves to doing that, working with the CAT team, the Frenchtown Neighborhood Improvement Authority, and investing resources in that community to improve it. Right now, I believe somewhere in the neighborhood of 90% or better of the residents in the Frenchtown community are renters. They're not property owners. I've been told there is an individual who's buying up a lot of the individual lots in the Frenchtown community. And I'm sure their intent is not to hold on to those lots, but maybe to look at an opportunity for those lots to be sold. So we may need to look at that going forward in terms of what the intent is, and that is in the neighborhood. That's not in the commercial corridor that we're talking about now.
Right.
Fur and Auto has been there for 30 years. A garage. That doesn't reflect the Frenchtown community. Haven of Rest Mission, that was the homeless shelter, does not reflect the Frenchtown community. Chubby's Chicken does not reflect the Frenchtown community. And so I'm not sure of what we're looking at in terms of preserving that part of Frenchtown. What we do need to do is revitalize and redevelop that area. And just across the street, there's already contemplated to be another development. Tony Brown and his company are looking at developing the area that used to be the old homeless shelter and other parts of the eastern part of that intersection of Macomb and West Tennessee. And so we don't know what that will look like. There is no necessary theme in Frenchtown. We've got the Renaissance building, we've got the Standard, right. We've got Kansas Village, we've got the Roberts property there on Macomb. So there's not really a theme. But what we do need to do is make sure that that community is protected, the neighborhoods, and that's what we've committed ourselves to doing. Right now, we've got $6 million committed through the CRA for improvements and revitalization in the Frenchtown community. We've got housing programs in that community. We are attempting to address the crime issues in the community. We've supported businesses in the community, and more of that is to come. So it's not like the community has been neglected. But this is an opportunity, because those private properties have been sold, for us to develop it. And I also want to thank Peerless, because when we did the negotiations for the standard, that kind of give and take didn't occur. They came in, they built what they wanted to build, they sold it, they made some promises about artwork and the kind of facade improvements that we're talking about being reflected on that building. They sold it to another owner, and that commitment was neglected. And so, I want to thank Peerless for their willingness to negotiate with members of the CAT team and come up with some agreement on a mutual benefit agreement that will be negotiated. But I think we're headed in the right direction. Based on our workshop today, one of the things we know that if we're going to keep our millage rate at 4.1 with 55% of our property off the tax roll, this is the kind of development that we're going to need, where it's properly zoned and it's responsible development that will bring property taxes that we rely on so heavily into the city of Tallahassee, so that we can make sure that we keep taxes low. And we have the lowest millage rate, which means that we tax our residents, property owners, lower than any other comparable city in the state of Florida. I hope the media will report that, because it's true. And the services that we provide are some of the best that you'll find anywhere with what we collect in terms of the property taxes. All of that is on our website if you want to verify it. It was in our workshop this morning. So that's why I'm prepared to support the motion that Commissioner Williams-Cox has made and suggest that we move forward on this project, but we continue our commitment to ensuring that the residents and business owners of the Frenchtown area get what they indicate they want to see done to that community and to that neighborhood going forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well said. Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, I want to thank Peerless for their interest in developing in our community. I'm not going to support the motion on the table. I don't believe in selling public land without a bid process. And I had a few questions about the community benefit agreement proposal. But first off, Mr. Langston, are you registered to lobby on behalf of Peerless? Okay. What's that?
We're commercial real estate brokers.
Okay. And will you be compensated if this
And
moves
the
forward?
commission, like any commercial real estate deal, yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I would just check with our lobbyist definition and the treasurer clerk if appropriate for setting up meetings with elected officials.
And I filled out the form accordingly. I put everybody on there we have worked with.
Thank you, sir. I just want to make sure, if appropriate, to fill one out, it gets filled out. That's
We'll follow.
all the indication. Thank you, sir. Secondly, on the community, I guess my issue with calling this saying we negotiated is we've had the CAT team say what they want, we've had the developer say what they'll do, and we call that a deal. I've been in a lot of negotiations, and there's back and forth, and I don't think we've really given the CAT team the opportunity to actually negotiate in good faith if there is contention on especially some of the major issues, which is including access to the space and the contribution of $250,000. I did notice in both Mutaki Akbar's letter and the email from the CAT team that we received, item 8 said to contribute $250,000 to the restoration of 507 West Brevard Street. Agenda item in our agenda item 8 said to contribute up to $250,000. So, Mr. City Manager, I'm just confused about that discrepancy and if our agenda item is reflecting accurately what the CAT team proposed.
Let me ask Mr. Tedder to respond to that. The letter, it was an email from Mr. Akbar that we've attached to the agenda item, just in case there's any not clarity, but any confusion. Wayne, can you address that?
Yes, sir. Commissioners, what was addressed to your agenda item was what was sent to me as we were preparing this agenda. I did not receive this revised letter until yesterday. And so I spoke to the changes that were identified that I could see just from a quick read of the changes.
And when did we put out the agenda?
Last Wednesday.
Thank you.
Mr. Tedder, the letter attached to the agenda item dated March 2nd from Mutaki Akbar, item 8 said to contribute $250,000 to the restoration. It doesn't say up to. That's my...
And again, that's a little bit of semantics, but I can just tell you the response from the developer was that they are putting a development that's going to generate somewhere between $4 and $7 million of TIF back into the community. There was no commitment from the developer to provide funding for that based on the impact that this development will have back into the community that can plow that money through the CRA process.
Thank you. I understand that item was rejected anyway, but I don't think it's semantics to say contribute $250,000 or up to. I mean, that makes a meaningful impact. Up to could be $50 if they accepted that item and we voted to move forward. So I just want to make sure our language and agenda items reflect clearly what the CAT team asked for. Thank you, Mr. Tedder. I think, apart from that, as was stated, the benefits to the CRA, the development would proceed with or without the sale of this property. So I think those benefits would be realized to the Frenchtown Southside CRA, regardless of the decision we make today. But I think the overarching issue, I think we need to reject this idea that you can't develop a quarter acre, that you can't develop a half acre. Cities all across America and all across the world have developed grand, great, walkable districts, parcel by parcel, and it adds character and it adds community. And it doesn't mean it has to be one story. Large-scale things can be done on quarter acres, and I think we always get stuck thinking the only way we can develop our community is through mega block projects, and I just reject that assertion, and I think we need to look broader of how we can include more people and smaller parcels, so we're also spreading the wealth amongst communities. Someone from Frenchtown may be able to develop on a quarter acre that can't develop a project at this scale, and I think that adds value to everybody. So with that being said, I'm going to stand with the Frenchtown CAT team and move that we reject the offer.
All right. Motion on the table is for Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox motion, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem. Any further comment?
I was gonna just on point with what Commissioner Matlow just said.
Oh, Commissioner Matlow, did you make a motion?
I did.
I'm sorry. A substitute motion for?
To reject the offer.
To reject the offer. Is there a second on the table?
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved by Commissioner Matlow to reject the offer, seconded by Commissioner Porter. Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox.
I want to just point out to Commissioner Matlow's point. I don't know which part of the CAT team I was speaking with, but I spoke to a member of the CAT team, a leader of the CAT team this morning. And that was not the impression that I had, that they wanted to reject this. But I will point out in the letter on item number 8, it says 501 West Brevard Street. Where is that?
Ashmore.
Okay. Is that 501 West Brevard Street, Ashmore? I thought Ashmore was somewhere.
This was Ashmore's, and again, the previous letter that was submitted that was included in part of your agenda had that misidentified.
Okay, okay. Because I thought it was
507 is the Ashmore's building.
That's what I thought. Okay. So I just wanted that point of clarification.
All right.
So.
Mr. Mayor?
Sure, Commissioner.
I would just bring to my colleagues' attention that a vote for the CAT team recommendations and against this project means that there will be millions of dollars that will not be available through the CRA for redevelopment, if that's my understanding.
On point, the developer said, that they would proceed with development with the surrounding.
Okay.
So that development would create dollars for the district.
I got you. Okay. But it was my understanding that, and Mr. City Manager, you might be able to answer this, that there would not be much, if anything, that could be developed on that piece of property.
Yeah, Mr. Manager.
Yeah, and actually Wayne's much more of an expert. There's an image that was shown early in the presentation. I think it is telling because the property around it, east and west, it would encapsulate this property. So I think that in itself, there's a map at the beginning of this presentation. I think that's helpful to visualize.
Yeah.
And just in terms of what could you do if, that's it.
Right.
So the yellow would be the city's parcels. I believe all of the red is it says under contract by the developer. So with an intention to develop and build that. So it starts to encapsulate the city's property. So I think that's the point of this.
Right. And the only access to it, if something was put there, or even green space, it could only be accessed from Tennessee Street.
That is correct.
A 6-lane thoroughfare going through the, okay. All right.
All right. So, yes, ma'am,
If I
Commissioner
can say
Williams-Cox.
on point, I am not saying that, that something could not be developed there. But when we're looking at Frenchtown communities, Southside communities, we want these communities to be congruent and looking like other communities. We don't want a hodgepodge of things that don't go together in our communities. We want our communities to look good, just like everybody else's community. And I don't think that we could go to the northeast and build something like this and leave 2 lots there just for someone to play in. That would not go well with the homeowners. That would not go well with other folks. So when we're looking at these things, I don't want to get emotional about it. I just want to say that we want nice things as well. When we're looking at communities of color, we want things to look good as well. And so, not that it couldn't be developed. Yes, it could be developed, but with it, it'd be like one of these things don't belong kind of situation. So let's just kind of keep that in mind. We're talking about identity. We're talking about image. We're talking about a lot of things, and that is Tennessee Street is a gateway into Tallahassee. I don't, I'm not saying that it's a gateway to Frenchtown or whatever, but I'm saying it's the gateway to Tallahassee, and we don't want people saying, well, what's going on there? So let's be consistent. Let's have some consistency even in our neighborhoods of color.
The substitute motion on the table made by Commissioner Matlow is to reject the bid, seconded by Commissioner Porter. All those in favor of the substitute motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
And it fails on a 3-2 vote with Commissioner Williams-Cox, the Mayor Pro Tem, and the Mayor in opposition. We are back on the original motion that was made by Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox, seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
And it passes 3-2 with Commissioner Porter and Commissioner Matlow in opposition. We are on item number 13.03.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll go quickly into this. It's the last scheduled week of our 2022 legislative session. As I understand it, they're very close on the budget, and that probably will carry us into next week before it's approved, but we are at the end of this year's legislative session. I'd like to have Christian Doolin, our Director of Strategic Innovation, give us an update. We heard some things that are included in this year's actions that I think are encouraging, but we wanted to give an update in its entirety.
Thank you, Manager, Mayor, Commission. So a quick one and here for questions. I think you're probably all aware, and we discussed earlier this morning, that the state, there's now a 5.3% raise in the budget for state workers, which means a lot for families in Tallahassee. An impact of more than $100 million locally for those families. So that's great news. Tempo has now been increased in funding in the budget to $500,000. So that's double what it was funded last year if signed by the governor. And that would represent 140 participants covered with the support that Dr. Thomas and the department has been giving. As the manager mentions, the budget votes now move to Monday at 12:30. and then there's a cooling off period, so it could be the end of next week before we know for sure that we're locked in. And as of now, there've been some other updates on policy items that we've been tracking the whole time, including the bill regarding increasing limits on sovereign immunity for lawsuits there. That's now dead. So that's good news. We were in opposition to that, along with most cities in Florida. Late breaking news right before and between our meetings today, and great news. Last night at the federal level, the House and the Senate reached agreement on an omnibus appropriation budget to fund the FY22 federal government. And included in that, we were able to secure community project funding requests, which I had mentioned about a year ago. That was the earmarks process that had been reopened up at the federal level. We are now in that budget for a $4 million funding for TLH and runway repairs. That is in Congressman Dunn's district. And, we've been working with our local delegation on 2 of those requests. And so we really appreciate the advocacy of Congressman, his office, and our local delegation more broadly on that. So that's fantastic news, and just wanted to share that. Just got it between the meetings. I'm here for answer any questions, and appreciate the time.
Excellent. Mr. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
No, sir.
All right, any questions? Mayor Pro Tem.
Just a quick question, Mr. Mayor. Christian, what is the update on the net metering bill? And if I put you on the spot.
I'm a little on the spot, but
Okay.
my understanding is that for things that aren't locked in right now, so we had a lot of amendments that happened to proposed bills on the local ordinances for the local business impacts, and those those were adjusted along the way. Anything that's not that's still active and open and not voted on is about to close and not move.
Okay.
So just like sovereign immunity, if there's no agreement reached on that, that's going to be dead.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great. The recommended action is just to accept the report as presented. Christian, great job. Appreciate it. Any further comment? Is there a motion on the table?
Move acceptance.
Second.
Okay, probably moved by Commissioner Williams-Cox, seconded by Commissioner Porter. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes unanimously 5-0. Item 13.04.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, we're seeking your authorization to accept and expend $121,510 from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement Project Safe Neighborhood grant funds. The grant provides funding for additional law enforcement and prevention measures with the goal of reducing violent crime. It does not require any matching funds. The funds would be used for additional license plate readers, support of the gang task force, additional training for 20 law enforcement officers, and conflict resolution training and drug and gang resistance training for middle and high school youth. Chief Revel is here if you have any questions on this item.
Do we have any public comment on this item?
No, sir.
Chief, any comment?
The one thing I'd like to add is just kudos to Virginia Cartwright, Gary Williams, and the team. We originally submitted this request for $96,100, and the grant was so well written that they awarded us an additional $25,000 plus just based on the money that was available. So that's a credit to them for the grant that they produced.
Recommended actions for option number 1. Is there any discussion?
Move staff recommendation on option number 1. Mr.
Mayor Pro Tem has properly moved option number 1, seconded by Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox. No further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously 5-0. Thank you. We're on item number 13.05.
Thank you, sir. Airport staff has identified the need to begin planning for the rehabilitation of a taxiway Bravo at the airport. The taxiway pavement, along with associated electrical infrastructure, is in need of rehabilitation, while also incorporating updated federal airfield design and safety standards. The taxiway itself runs parallel to the airport's primary runway. Proposals were solicited for design professional services to begin this effort. 6 proposals were received, and staff recommends that the commission approve the highest ranking proposal from McFarland Johnson Incorporated. If we cannot successfully negotiate an agreement with them, we would move to the next highest ranked firm. David Pollard, our airport director, is here to add any additional details or answer questions that you might have.
Mr. Clerk, any public comment on this item?
No, sir.
Excellent. David, thanks for joining us. Any comments, questions, direction?
Move staff recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem has properly moved staff recommendation.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox. All those in favor of the motion on the table signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. Passes 4-0 with Commissioner Porter out of chambers. David, while I got you there real quick, on a separate but side note, and thank you for coming. I know in the past couple of weeks, we've probably all been contacted by constituents in regards to the lines at TSA because of the implementation of the new equipment and the new training. Are we over this hump?
Thank you, Mayor. Oh, yes, we're working closely with TSA. We've been in very close coordination with them. We've escalated it to their senior leadership. They've been very responsive to us. We've now got on-site technical support that's working with us during our peak times. That's when it's getting to be the biggest challenge, which is usually that early morning push. Yes, we have several flights aligned at the same time, so it's been very challenging. Certainly not where we want to be, but we have passed that hump. We've got the new technology in place that really takes us to a much higher level of overall levels of security. TSA is going to continue to work with us. I've actually asked them to work with us on beginning the planning efforts. As our numbers go up and we work to achieve our strategic priorities, you may recall one of those priorities is to surpass our all-time record level of 1 million passengers per year. We are gaining traction on that, and certainly it's important that the public give themselves plenty of time. We're recommending to arrive at least 2 hours prior to your scheduled departure. It's important for the public to understand that there's gate cutoff times. So if they don't get to the ticket counter before 45 minutes, the system will lock them out and they need to work with their carrier to rebook. We want to make that experience, that passenger experience, as good as it can be. But the answer to your question is yes, I believe we're over the hump. We're continuing to work the bugs out of the latest technology, and we're going to continue to press ahead and do the planning for our increasing numbers.
Mr. Mayor, may I add to that? Sure. That was a great answer, but just for the public's benefit, what's happening is we have 2 security lanes at the airport, and the TSA is implementing new imaging equipment, those things that your bags and things run through, and the equipment is totally state-of-the-art. The imaging capability is amazing, will lead to greater safety. It's slowed things down. We were down to 1 lane. I believe we've got what David's saying. We've got both lanes open now. The TSA agents are getting faster and better, but the imaging capability is amazing. We're on the front end of airports doing this around the country. If you travel, you'll see some of the old antiquated equipment. So I'm really glad to see we've got the new equipment, but I just want to share that for the public's benefit. That's what's happening right now.
Excellent. Thanks, David.
So Mr. Mayor, a question since you opened this door. What time, how early should we be at the airport? I have a 5:45 flight on Friday.
We want you to have the best experience possible. Please arrive at least 2 hours prior to your scheduled departure. Always stay in close coordination with your airlines. You can check your flight information online if you're not aware. It's on our website, tlhairport.com. And you can certainly get to flight information that way through your app on your mobile device, things of that nature. But I always encourage people to give themselves plenty of time. We do see a lot of people that don't give themselves plenty of time. So it's very important with our increasing numbers, spring break traffic, all things considered. It's going to continue. Our numbers are going to continue to climb, so we need to be prepared for that.
And so do we still have pre-check?
We do have pre-check. We're going to bring that back. I was talking just today, talking about getting that enrollment center back. Typically September timeframe, we do the planning and bring it back to this community so people can enroll for that. But it's a great program and it helps very much, yes.
This is a personal question. I'm enrolled. I'm just making sure that when I get there, I don't have to disrobe to get through.
Yeah.
I got
Please don't.
Okay.
All right, stay left, you'll see the marked lane for TSA pre-check.
Okay, just making sure. You know, you have to take your coats off, you have to take your shoes off, you know.
Manager?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, not to belabor this, but pre-check's really good, by the way, Commissioner. We highly recommend it. But while we're on the topic, I want to say this. So David works closely with the TSA on these things, and we are very quickly approaching our high water mark for air travel out of our airport. David is already working closely with our federal partners to get a third lane. And so we are at that point. He's forecasting even higher traffic. And so these are good problems to have. It's not the most convenient necessarily to wait, but David's making the case. I wanted you to know that, to get a third lane because of the volume and the experiences we're having. Just want to take that opportunity to share that.
Sure, Commissioner Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm happy to hear that, Mr. Manager. I just wanted to commend you and your staff. I was at the airport. You know, people turn into monsters at airports when they've missed their flight, and your staff were just amazingly patient and calm, de-escalated some situations I witnessed, and y'all are doing a great job. I just wanted to commend you for that.
Thank you, and I might just add before I leave, our main thing to stay focused on is to provide a safe, secure, efficient, and customer-friendly environment for our travelers, and we intend to do that. We've stumbled a little bit here lately with working with the TSA, but we're working with them, third lane, and also I might also mention doing planning for a second machine down below that screens the baggage as well.
Great. Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Item number 13.06, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, sir. This item seeks your approval of Resolution 22R05 to authorize the city manager or designee to accept and execute a $1.3 million grant with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection for the Centrate Equalization System project. This has to do with our operational controls at our TP Smith Water Reclamation Facility. It will reduce nitrogen concentrations in the effluent. It will also provide equipment needed for a future project to further reduce those concentrations. This project will reduce energy and chemical costs by up to 10% due to the efficiency gained from the project. The DEP grant is for $1.3 million for a project of $2.6 million, so that's welcomed information. The design for the system is now 90% complete. If we move forward with the project, we would expect it to be fully operational by 2024. Andrew Platt from our Underground Utilities Department is here to answer any questions you may have.
Andrew, y'all do great work, man. I really do appreciate everything you do.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Do we have any public comment on this?
No, sir.
Okay. Do we have any questions for Mr. Platt?
Move option 1.
Okay. Commissioner Matlow probably moves option number 1, recommended option, seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. See no further comment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. Passes unanimously, 5-0. Do we have any other business to come before us right now?
No, sir.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and call for a break. We'll come back at 6 o'clock for the public hearing, and then we'll hear from citizens on unagended items and hear from all of us. Anything that's on your mind. Is 6 o'clock. Call the public hearing to order. We're on item number 15.01. Mr. Manager.
I'll
Thank
take
City
that.
Madam Attorney, excuse
Thank
me.
you. Item number 15.01, the first and only public hearing on ordinance number 22-0-02, an ordinance of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, amending Section 6 of the Charter of the City of Tallahassee to annex within the corporate area of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, upon adoption of said ordinance, property being situated in Leon County, Florida, near the intersection of Woodville Highway and Capitol Circle Southwest, in accordance with the voluntary annexation provisions of Section 171.044 Florida statutes, provided for severability, conflicts, and an effective date. Recommended action is option 1, conduct the public hearing and adopt ordinance number 22-0-02.
Excellent. Mr. Clerk, do we have any speakers on this item?
We have no speakers on this item.
Colleagues?
Move acceptance.
Been properly moved for staff recommendation for option number 1 by Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox, seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously 5-0.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question for
course, yes,
for the
ma'am.
point of the public? You know, we have been encouraged by one of our county commissioners to seek opportunities to annex in this area. So I want to make sure that the public knows that this is the process.
Correct.
This is how it happens, and it's voluntary.
It is voluntary.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. We are on item number 15.02, Madam Attorney.
Thank you. Item number 15.02 is the first and only public hearing on ordinance number 22-0-13, an ordinance of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, amending Chapter 12, Article 4, Division 2 of the Tallahassee Code of General Ordinances concerning noise disturbances, providing for conflict, severability, and an effective date. Recommended action is option 1, conduct public hearing and adopt ordinance number 22-0-13. Proposed ordinance was introduced on February 16, 2022, and is before the City Commission for public hearing and adoption. Proposed ordinance prohibits noise disturbances, which are defined as sound which is unreasonably loud, raucous, or jarring to a reasonable person of normal sensibilities, and which is plainly audible to a police officer or code enforcement officer. Under the ordinance, plainly audible means sound which is detected by a police officer or code enforcement officer using the officer's unaided hearing faculties at a distance of 100 feet or greater from the source of the sound, or the property line which is the site of the sound if the property is not otherwise accessible to the officer. The ordinance deletes existing sound regulations which are based on decibel levels and zoning districts. The ordinance retains the existing urban core where sound is only regulated utilizing the plainly audible standard between 2 a.m. and 7 a.m. Outside the urban core, the plainly audible standard would apply 24 hours a day. Proposed ordinance number 22-0-13 provides for civil penalties of $250 for initial violation, $350 for second violation, and $500 for subsequent violations. Senior Assistant City Attorney Lou Norvell is available to assist with answering any questions.
Excellent, thank you so much. Mr. Clerk, walk us through our public hearing comments.
We have 2 speakers at this time, Mayor, on this item. The first is Nancy Marciniak, who is here in chambers and will speak first.
Excellent.
Followed by Jim Ward, who is connected via WebEx, and
Wonderful.
we'll go there when she finishes her remarks.
Hey, thanks for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Nancy Marcinac, 2762 Sweet Ridge Street, Tally. First, I want to thank you all for finally getting this noise ordinance up here. I want to thank TPD for their help, of course. I do want to especially thank Commissioner Porter for taking the extra time to have meetings with myself and other community members to really get our input, which I think hopefully helped. And I want to add that Commissioner Porter had suggested previously, could have been the February 16th, that we should definitely not just like vote this in and forget about it. We should definitely look in 6 months to see if this worked, and do we need to possibly revise this if it did not. I would also ask that businesses that cause these issues, and not just businesses, but the people in the parking lots that cause these issues, be told by the city and the TPD that they would be held to a higher standard from now on, that being a good neighbor is to surrounding residential areas is no longer an option, but is now required. And I would personally say that a business would probably want patrons in their parking lot, not people blasting music and not coming in and paying for, you know, whatever entertainment that they offer. Thank you again. Please say yes.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Our next speaker is Jim Ward, who is connected and may begin when you're ready.
Thank you. Your name and address for the record, please, Mr. Ward.
Hi, my name is Jim Ward. I live at 2010 West Randolph Circle. And I thank you for the opportunity to just make a few brief comments. I commend the city attorney and the Tallahassee Police Department for their proactive and their practical approach to revising the city's noise disturbance ordinance so that they can actually take effective action. So I support the adoption of the revised ordinance. This may well be moot or academic, but I observed the last commissioners' hearing, and there was a concern raised by one of the commissioners in the last meeting about eliminating a provision that in effect in the current ordinance that would have required a police officer to go to a receiving or affected property to gauge whether a noise creates a disturbance. I think the revisions clearly do away with that for good reason. And I'll just cite as an example, which kind of feeds into the comments of the previous speaker. I live a couple of blocks away from Thomasville Road. From time to time, someone or people, but sometimes it's just a lone knucklehead, parks in the parking lot, cranks up their stereo, and wakes up half the neighborhood. I think we all know that in order for the police department to do its job properly, it has to move in a prompt manner and move promptly. And to require a police officer, say, to come to my house, if I were to place a noise disturbance call at 2 a.m., to have the police officer come to my house in order to gauge whether the noise is sufficiently disruptive to then act upon it, just introduces more delay and more inefficiency in the process. The officer has to come here first, make the assessment, then make their way to the business and approach whoever's responsible for the noise. That's just not a practical way to deal with a noise disturbance. They need to go directly to where the noise disturbance is occurring and gauge it according to the plainly audible standard in the new ordinance, and take the simple and direct steps to address the noise disturbance. So again, I applaud the city attorney and the Tallahassee Police Department for approaching this in a very practical manner, and I know that I and others in the neighborhoods, in our neighborhood and surrounding neighborhoods, really strongly endorse moving forward with the revised ordinance.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Clark, our next speaker.
I only have one other speaker, and that's on unagended. No more on this item.
Okay, sounds great. Let's open it up for discussion, comment. Mr. Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question based on the feedback. I know that I'm not trying to revisit the conversation from before, but I am curious, for our current ordinance, does it in fact require that TPD go to where the complaint is for the receiving line of the noise? Does it require that?
So the current ordinance, basically what you're doing is you're measuring from where the sound is coming from.
Right.
Out 100 feet.
Okay.
And if you can hear it and it's clearly audible, the officer can write a citation.
Okay. And to one of the first speaker, remind me, do we have some sort of notice policy for this? Are we going to do any communications push to let people know that the noise policy ordinance has changed?
The city manager can address that a little better.
Please.
And actually, I'd like to ask D.C. Holmes, Deputy Chief Holmes, to come forward. We're going to begin enforcing this tonight if you pass it tonight.
All right.
We're not going to wait on any communication.
All right.
That clearly becomes part of a public messaging that, certain things are allowable or not. We're not waiting on that. They're ready to, and I'd rather you say it, Deputy Chief Holmes. Obviously, you're in charge of patrol in terms of what instructions you've given your officers in terms of enforcement if this passes tonight.
I haven't given instructions at this point because I was waiting on the completion of this hearing.
Maybe what will you tell your officers, and when will that begin? Yes, sir.
Well, if you pass this tonight and the instruction is to start enforcing it tonight, the instructions will go out tonight to start enforcing it. But we need to make sure we get the language in our citations when we start issuing them, so we make sure that the officers are fully understanding what we're issuing them, and also what the individual who's being charged understands what they're getting charged with. So we want to make sure we get that language uploaded into our system so we can make sure that pushes out on the citations.
And also, too, there is a voluntary compliance. So if you comply within five minutes, you're not going to receive a citation.
Thank you. And I just want to clarify, I wasn't suggesting that we delay. I just meant to businesses or neighborhood associations, just a blast to let them know that this has changed, not anything to delay
You mean a press
enforcement.
release?
Yeah, I just meant, that's all I meant, like a press release or something, if we typically do that.
Yeah, I think that would be good communication to make sure we do a press release that the noise ordinance has passed, put out some information so the community and everyone will have an understanding of what's required in the ordinance and what they'll be required to do to avoid being issued a citation. And the bottom line is we just want compliance.
Right, of course. Thank you. And then, I'm going to support the motion. I just want to clarify, because I've gotten some emails about it, my position initially in not supporting option 1 was because I felt that there were too many unanswered questions. It was not because I didn't support a noise ordinance. I recognize this problem. I've had conversations, and so I'm really glad that we can bring this in for landing tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Deputy Chief Holmes. To people who live near Appalachia Parkway, North Monroe, West Tennessee, Canopy, can they sleep well tonight?
Let's hope so.
All right.
This is going to take time. It's going to be a process. It's not a silver bullet. It's not going to end overnight. This is something we're going to have to get started on and start enforcing. And then as it goes along, I'm sure we'll gain more and more compliance.
Thank you, sir.
But it's going to start tonight.
Yes, sir.
All right.
It'll start tonight.
Any motions?
I would move staff recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
All right, staff recommendation has been properly moved by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox. Seeing no further comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes unanimous 5-0.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Chief.
Do we have anything else to come before us at the public hearing this evening?
No, Mayor.
Excellent. We're on unagended business speakers. This is the opportunity for anybody in the city of Tallahassee to come and speak their mind. Mr. Clark, how many speakers do we have?
1.
Okay.
Jeremy Block.
Jeremy. Thanks for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Welcome, Mayor. Jeremy Block, 1109 East 6th Avenue, Tallahassee. I'm returning to the lectern tonight because I did a proposal back on the 26th of January to push my idea for a gun buyback program for our community. And now I've learned a whole bunch of additional things in the time that's elapsed since I was last here. And the most salient of those is that I would like to request that this board bring this idea up as an agenda item to instruct staff to do whatever background information is needed and to bring an agenda item so we can decide if this is a pathway that the city would like to take. My argument is that we've done so much for gun violence, but all of it has been reactive. And this is an idea that absolutely, by definition, is proactive. There's a lot of ups and downs. There's some mechanical things that have to be worked out. I just want to run through you very quickly what my vision of this would be as communicating with other municipalities, i.e. Gainesville, Boynton Beach, where it's been successful. I was unable to ascertain whether the last gun buy program that was attempted in our community, which was in 2016, I haven't been able to get any documentation on how that went. So I'm just going by what I've been able to learn. And as we know, and we're too darn familiar with, this is going to be a drive-by evolution. It's going to be just like going for your COVID testing. You're not going to get out of your car. If you arrive at one of these collection sites where law enforcement officers are going to be present, you will drive up, you will have already placed your weapon that you're going to be turning in the trunk of your car. When the officer identifies himself, he's going to ask permission to go around to the back of your car. You will open the trunk. The officer will examine the weapon, and one of the big caveats to making this work is that there will be a stipulation that all weapons have to be operational. That was a big problem in other times in other communities. People were turning in just pieces of junk and expected to get a big payday. Also, when it comes to finance, I want to make it something along the lines of you will receive, without questions asked, up to $400. It will be up to the officer's discretion as to set the value of the weapon. So
you're at 2.5 minutes.
It will be a function of an armorer, ideally, to make those decisions. And the final thing, before I run out of time, is based on Sheriff McNeil's Anatomy of a Homicide, I have 3 locations to start this program. One is Griffith Heights, one is Bond Community, and the other is Providence. And those are areas that have been identified. I mean, it's been like common knowledge in the community where that's where the heart of the weapons problem exists. So let's use that cumulative information to set this up so it's a win-win.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment?
I have no other speakers.
Anyone here did not get a chance to fill out a card that would be interested in speaking? Okay, let's go to the sharing of ideas. Commissioner Porter.
Nothing for me. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Nothing for me.
Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 3 items to bring up. The first one, in regard to the time it takes for us to review proposals from the Independent Ethics Board. It's been, I think, close to a year since we first received some, and we went through multiple meetings as well as a workshop to arrive at today's vote. I'd like to see those expedited in the future. So I would hope to get support that when the Independent Ethics Board submits recommendations, we schedule them to be reviewed by the City Commission within 60 days. And if there's support for that, I'll make a motion.
There is a motion on the table to expedite the review of Ethics Board recommendations to the City Commission within 60 days. Upon receipt?
Upon receipt.
And this is to bring an item back before the City Commission.
Correct.
Okay, is there a second to the motion?
Second.
It's been seconded by Commissioner Porter. Discussion? Absolutely. Madam Attorney.
Well, in terms of our ability to get it back, it really is based on what they're proposing. If it's something that is, maybe one item, that it's not difficult, obviously, to get it back. And if it's a complete overhaul, it takes longer. I think, I do hear what you're saying. I think the issue might be, perhaps the commission might raise it in sharing of ideas that they want to bring it back. And that would be a signal to us, bring it back, or tell us, bring it back if it's brought up. And so we know it's been received by you, because it's not for me to bring it back. I have to be directed to bring it back. So, depending on the length, the extent, the nature of the analysis, it could take, longer than 60 days, or it could take, a month. So I think if you receive it, if perhaps during a sharing of ideas, if someone would bring it up, then we could be directed at that point.
Maybe it would make more sense to just invite the ethics officer within 60 days to present. That turned out to be the process we did this time, was he came and presented without the agenda item moving forward. And then if there was desire to move forward with one of the items, we could make the motion for the attorney to review. If that's an acceptable modification.
Yeah.
All right, so what is your amended motion? I'm sorry?
When the Independence Ethics Board issues official recommendations, we schedule an opportunity for the ethics officer to present them to the City Commission within 60 days.
Oh, we can do that. Not a problem. Okay, motion's on the table. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously, 5-0.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2 other items I wanted to touch on was our real estate policy. I mentioned this in the ethics workshop, that I believe we should, the rule should be to bid out public land rather than the exception. And I believe we should update our real estate policy to require a City Commission agenda item anytime a realtor, lobbyist, or buyer expresses interest in property not currently for sale, with the options to bid out the property or not entertain offers. It seems that the current process, we get 8-9 months down the line, and I don't want to give prospective developers and buyers the assumption that it's going to get approved. So this would be an update to our real estate policy, that when that contact is initiated, it gets brought to the City Commission, and there isn't staff work spent along the way before the city commission decides if they want to explore disposing of that property.
Is that a?
So that would be a motion to update our real estate policy to require a city commission agenda item upon contact of interest in purchasing property.
Point of clarification.
Wait, hold on, is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Porter. Point of clarification.
Point of clarification, are you asking for an agenda item to come back, or you're saying what you want the change to be?
An agenda item to come back to update
Okay.
the policy.
An agenda item to come back to explore changes to the policy? Or-
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. How many offers on an annual basis, city land, if we're going to bring back every single offer for city land that comes, even the ones that you discard and don't even take into consideration, how much are we talking about?
Several dozens. So we get inquiries, so the city owns quite a bit of property, and we get inquiries on a regular basis. That may just simply be an inquiry. And they inquire and they say, is the city interested in selling, or, just doing due diligence. All of those just end there. Some, they inquire further. They inquire and then they do their due diligence and they may inquire further. Some, not many, most times you never see it. We're in a different real estate market now, get to the point where they want to make an offer. So the vast majority of them nothing ever happens. Some inquire and we say, no, we've got a particular purpose for that property. The Northwood property is a great example. Lots of inquiries there, but we just tell them, no, there's a plan. So it would be several dozens that we get in any given year of inquiries.
So, and what does the policy state right now? If there's an inquiry that could be legitimate, you bring it straight to the commission?
Yeah, there's a $100,000 threshold. The city manager has authority to make transactions up to $100,000.
Okay.
So if we received, hypothetically, if we received an offer or interest, and it's above 100,000, so that's going to be most parcels, just about all parcels, then it has to come to the commission for disposition. And that's what's happened heretofore. You have the authority and the policy as a commission to do pretty much whatever you want to do. If you find it to be in the city's best interest to sell it to that person, you can do that. If you want to put it out for a bid, or if you want to negotiate, kind of like what you did earlier tonight, you have that discretion. That's what the policy lays out. It says that it has to come to the city commission for action.
Okay. Any further, Commissioner Matlow? Then I got Commissioner Williams-Cox. Commissioner Porter.
I'm just.
Okay.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if it's a dozen properties, I think we should see them, because I don't want to get to a point where, 8 or 9 months ago, when we first knew property on Tennessee Street had an interest and other properties may be purchased but hadn't been purchased yet, the community had an opportunity on that end to voice their opinion of whether we should even consider selling it, because I don't think our decision is always based on whether there's an offer on the table. It's based on, do we have a different vision for that property? So this would be an opportunity as properties come up to explore that before official offers come in, or at least go down the process of working with staff. I mean, an offer out of the blue is one thing, but an offer we knew was coming for 8 months is a completely different scenario.
Commissioner Porter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to recommend, I agree. I think the thing that I generally care about, and the reason I seconded the motion, is I hate hearing that something has been in the works for several months without knowing, so that all of us can, if we want, communicate with the community and do what we can to make sure that a community benefits agreement makes both parties happy. I'm wondering, for the maker of the motion, did you have in mind, so what the specific language was, an inquiry or an offer? Were you imagining that it would be on consent, just sort of as an attachment?
For me, it would be an inquiry, and yeah, I think consent would be appropriate, that there's awareness that there's interest in public property for sale, and if, as a board, we have a desire not to see that conversation be explored, we could address it then, rather than having private interests spend months and months and have realtors involved when it may not be our will to even explore that conversation.
And so, Mr. Manager and the maker of the motion, is there a dollar threshold for that?
Is that question for me?
Yeah.
Well, I guess current policy, I mean, is $100,000 and below is the city manager's discretion. So I'm wondering for the maker of the motion, above $100,000?
$100,000 would be
okay.
Okay, Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Mr. Mayor, if I
I'm
can
sorry.
clarify,
Sure.
it's not a dozen, it's several dozens, maybe 100. I'm not trying to overstate it. There are a lot of inquiries, and I think that stands to reason. Most don't materialize. We may have uses for the property or other things, and so it's not an insignificant volume, it's a significant volume, and you don't know if it's going to materialize into an offer. But when it reaches the point of an offer, that's what the policy triggers us to bring it to you, with a noticing period of no less than 3 weeks to the surrounding area.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer Clerk. Over the next couple of weeks, would you be able to provide us with all real estate inquiries over the past year?
We'll check with the departments and see if we can get you the information.
Thank you, sir.
There you go. Commissioner Williams-Cox.
I was just going to ask for a point of clarification, because all public property or public land is not being purchased by outside folk. The Ashmore, which is city-owned as well, we got a community who's trying to put that in play. So what do we do in that situation? What would be your?
This would be specifically for the selling and disposal of public land.
But
so if
what if the community wants to buy it?
Then yeah, that offer would come before us to discuss.
And as I understand it, what the city manager is saying is that it comes to us once there is some trigger.
Yeah.
As opposed to, once upon a time, we used to get, every time there was a shooting, we used to get an email. But we kind of, that became a little bit more than we wanted to see or hear every Friday, Saturday night. So at what point are you saying that you want, every time there's an inquiry, we want to be notified, or you want to come to the commission, or for every inquiry of?
Yes, that's what I'd be looking for at the inquiry.
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Sure.
in response to Commissioner Matlow, so Commissioner Matlow, your office asked for the inquiries not long ago, and that was provided. I think that was compiled. We don't have a running list. I think that's probably indicative. That could be, Jim, I think I provided that, but I could certainly provide that again if that expedites the answer. And that's a history of inquiries, the nature of them, the properties in question, with a short description. We have that readily available. I can send that tomorrow.
Okay, yeah, that list I don't recall being in the hundreds, so I think
it was several dozens. The list was this long. It was a long list.
All right, we're going to bring this in for Landon. I'm not going to support the motion. I'm comfortable with the policy that we have. Any other further comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
And it fails, 3-2 with Commissioner Williams-Cox, the Mayor Pro Tem, and the Mayor in opposition. Commissioner Matlow, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And the last item I wanted to raise, a couple of times this year, we've been contacted by vendors or their lobbyists concerned about piggyback contracts and stating that they would like an opportunity to bid on certain items. I'm not sure what our piggyback policy is. I know there's some times when it may be the thing to do to expedite a certain thing or to continue a relationship, but when we have people actively telling us that they'd like to see it bid out and they believe that they could provide a better deal for the city, I think we should always provide that opportunity. So I would propose, instead of the current process where we just have an item for a piggyback approval to come back, we make, anytime we piggyback a contract, require 2 city commission items. One, introducing what the contract is and making a decision whether to seek a piggyback or put it out to bid, and then the second being the actual approval. So I would make a motion that we bring back an agenda item to explore a policy for piggyback contracts.
Second.
So there's a motion on the table to bring back an agenda item to explore a policy on piggyback contracts, made by Commissioner Matlow, seconded by Commissioner Porter. I would be more than happy to support a motion to bring back an information item and have procurement come and explain how the procurement process works before we, 5 lay people, try to jump in and establish policy with the agenda coming back. So I would not support the current motion as it is, but I would support moving forward and having procurement come back. I've got Commissioner Williams-Cox and Commissioner Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I thought that there was already some law, state law already for using, and you know, the term is piggybacking, but it's being resourceful is what I thought it was. I used to work for state purchasing, and I thought that there was something already in place that the state provides to allow this between municipalities, the state of Florida, and even feds. So in bringing back that information item, maybe we can get procurement to bring all of that to the table so that we get a good understanding of what that is and see if there's any gap that we might need to fulfill. Commissioner Matlow.
I think that's a great idea, you know, for full transparency, so everybody understands how procurement operates. I think that would be a great presentation. If you would like to change your motion for an information item, I think you'd probably get majority support, but I'm not going to support the motion as it is right now.
Sure. We can have the conversation at the informational item. So I'd modify the motion to make it an informational item as proposed.
That'd be great. Okay. All those in favor of the motion on the table signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously, 5-0. Commissioner Matlow, you have the floor.
Lastly, it's spring break. Enjoy your parties. Enjoy your kids. They'll be home all week.
Spring break for real?
Coming up next week.
Oh.
Yeah. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Excellent. Mayor Pro Tem.
I didn't know that.
Glad to see we've got the Ukrainian flag colors already on.
How about that? That was good stuff.
Good job, Mr. City Manager. That's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
I have 2 items. Number 1 this weekend is actually the Red Hills Horse Trials, and it kind of kicks off the festival season in the spring, and I hope the weather cooperates with us, and anyone that's going out, wish all the competitors well, and hope you have a wonderful time. And finally, I propose that we bring in the FSU school boys basketball team that just won the basketball state championship.
That's right. With their coach, of course.
With their coach, of course.
With their coach.
For celebration. That's very exciting that they won their state championship. Without objection?
No.
Excellent. Okay. With that, we stand adjourned. All right.